I'd like to call the meeting of June 23rd Study Commission to order, please. Can we have roll call?
Raylan Brandel, Laura Casey,
Here.
Dan Dennehy, Mary McCormick, Cindy Perdue-Dolan, Cindy Shaw, Chad Silk,
Here.
Mad Steffen. Is he here?
He's excused, as
Okay.
Mr. Dennehy as well.
And Ben Thielen.
Here.
Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer, please? Okay, public comment on any item on the agenda.
Auditor Vanderup, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, Montana. For and on behalf of the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., reference item 7A, Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners. Subject, Butte-Silver Bowl Charter, Section 3.03, Powers and Duties of the Council of Commissioners. We, the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., are still waiting for a reply as to whether or not duties as stated in this section are mandated or optional. Google says yes. In many contexts, duties are mandatory, meaning they are required or obligated or obligatory. Duties are often associated with legal or moral obligations, and failure to fulfill them, a duty can have consequences. The last Butte-Silver Bowl City County Attorney interpreted duties to be optional. We, the Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, Inc., would like to know what this current Butte-Silver Bowl City County Attorney says the state of Montana law says about duties. To say duties are not mandatory seems to us to be a little bit stupid. You might want to ask these commissioners tonight what their interpretation is relative to the term duties as stated in the current Butte-Silver Bowl Charter. If they believe duties in the Butte-Silver Bowl Charter can be interpreted as optional, then we would suggest that this commission consider separating duties from powers and inserting the word mandatory in this section of the Butte-Silver Bowl Charter before the word duties, so there can be no misinterpretation of the meaning of the term duties. Respectfully submitted for your consideration and your action.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderob. Any other public comment on any item on the agenda? Public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Study Commission.
Madam Chair, I have a letter. I mistakenly put it in the wrong part of the agenda, so I will read it now. Okay, this is an email sent to us from Dinah Olson McLeod on Monday, June 16th at 4:31. First of all, just to be clear, I am the citizen that reached out to Commissioner Thielen with a few questions, but apparently the rules were different for him than the others, as I heard other commissioners say they had a citizen reach out to them with a question, but were not asked who it was, etc. Anyway, I have a few things I would like to say. Number one, I think the PBX operator could possibly be moved out in the rotunda and also serve as a greeting and information person to those that enter and require assistance. I have never understood why they are in the chief executive's office to begin with. Number two, I am happy to start seeing some transparency in our government. Need much more. Most meetings do not post any minutes, and that should be mandatory. Budget and Finance shows total claims, but they do not show us who is getting paid or for what. Those should be scanned so we, the public, can see who is getting paid. Number three, all contracts should have a place on the county website for all to see. The CBAs are there, so all others should be also, no matter the size. Number four, I say yes to a city manager and 3 full-time commissioners. Bozeman, Gallatin County has double the population with 4 city and 3 counties, so I think 3 would work for us. Number 5, why do we have a separate DEI department? We have HR, enough of the nonsense. Number 6, not sure if this is in your scope, but our auditors have been the same since forever. Time to get an external audit done from someone not connected to Butte. Nothing against Newland and Company, but what do they charge and never done on a bid? I have a few more, but wanted to get this one email in tonight. I'd come in person, except I'm working out at the ranch. So much for retirement. I appreciate your efforts, and my only hope is that you all think for yourselves and not be sheep. Thank you, Dinah K. McLeod, 905 South Colorado Street, Butte, Montana. So this will be placed in our minutes. It will also be placed in our public comment folder.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. We're moving on to our conversations with departments, which is actually our conversations with our Council of Commissioners. And we do have several of you here tonight, and we've had the prepared questions. You've, I'm sure, seen some of the, excuse me, Ms. Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we want to approve the minutes from last week, or are we going to wait?
I apologize, I skipped that. Every meeting, I skip something. So, Ms. Cohn, I think you said that the approval of minutes were still in draft and you wanted to defer to next week because last week's meeting was so long and you did not have a chance to finish those. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I wanted to make sure, because of the nature of the meeting, that I got everything in there correctly. So they're still not done.
Commissioners, we'll approve those meeting minutes next week, just to give more time for the transcription. It was a very lengthy meeting last week. So back to our next one, our conversations with the department. So thank you, commissioners, for coming tonight to review things with us and go through those questions. We will plan to go through each question with all of you, but if you want to keep things brief or go back to what somebody else said, that's fine. We are here as long as you want to be here and have a conversation with us. We feel that making sure that we're hearing from those of you who are representing our community is incredibly important. So we thank you for your time tonight and for coming forward, and especially as we're making some study and looking at possible ideas that people have put forward in terms of trying to make us, our county government, more efficient. We feel that you guys probably have the best idea in terms of government function and efficiency, so we're really looking forward to the conversation tonight. Study commissioners, I'm going to ask us to try to stay very focused and on point with the charter language. I know there's probably a lot of other places we could veer off into, but in the interest of time and making sure that we hear from each person who wants to speak tonight, I want us to be really efficient if we can. So with that, I have heard that Russ O'Leary would like to go first. Yes? And Ms. Casey, I'll start with you tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. O'Leary, for being here. Our first question for you tonight is, what unique duties, responsibilities, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
Thank you, Chair Brandel and members of the Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and speak this evening. Being an interface between citizens and the county as an elected official is probably the most important thing I think that we do as commissioners. Because we are elected and not hired, we are able to be the people's voice in our county without fear of reprisal or job insecurity. And I think it's a very necessary check on other parts of the government. The current arrangement of the council is very part-time commissioners, and as far as I'm aware, all of our commissioners have some other job, a full-time job, or are retired. One of the challenges that I find particularly difficult is finding the time in the week to address every issue that I think is important to the citizens of my district and the county of Butte-Silver. I often have to just pick one or two issues in any given week to really dig in on, and then hope that other commissioners are doing the same for the other issues. So frankly speaking, I think we are voting on things that we're not fully informed about, and this isn't intentional, it's just the nature of being incredibly part-time. So I know that it's mainly around the challenges. I don't have any other comments on the duties and responsibilities, but I think maybe I'll address some of them later on in the questions.
Thank you. Follow-up questions? I keep looking over at Mr. Thielen. He's giving me a funny grin, so he's thinking about it. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. O'Leary, thank you. So with you saying being short on time, being that you guys are so part-time, do you feel that the people of Butte-Silver would be better served by full-time commissioners?
Commissioner Thielen, I will address this further in my other comments because I think it's one of the other questions we're asking, but I do think that that would be helpful. Right now, you know, we are, the commissioners, I think, are, calling them part-time is maybe not even really fair. It's a stretch, and you know, I don't mean to disparage anybody, but of course, historically, we've had a lot of commissioners who, you know, they get elected and then, you know, maybe realize that it's not as, they just don't have as much time as they thought they would otherwise, and so their version of being a representative for the county is to read the meeting or the agenda 20 minutes before the meeting and then sit and wait for others to ask questions. And I don't really think that that's very useful. I think it would be better to have more full-time commissioners that are able to dig on important issues.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Russ, for being here tonight. I appreciate it, and everybody for coming. Can you speak to what your sense is of, I think a lot of folks in Butte, or even around the state, don't realize that we have 12 commissioners and they are part-time, and they're shocked by not only the number but the fact that they're part-time. And your ability as a commissioner who votes on things and passes things on behalf of the community, but by and large most of that work happens from department heads and departments within Butte-Silver and here in the courthouse. I'm curious to know your dealings with that, and thinking that, you know, I'm trying to get this question out because I know it's a little convoluted and I apologize, but the fact that unelected people do a majority of the work and then come on a Wednesday night as a commissioner and you're supposed to vote yay or nay on an issue that you might know really nothing about, and the solution, I'm guessing, is a smaller number and full-time, but can you address that so folks at home can understand that process and how hard that is, especially with the amount of technical information and stuff, especially with Superfund. And that's a very long and loaded question, but I think you get the essence of it to respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. I generally agree with kind of the thrust of your question. There's a lot of stuff that we get in our packets every week on our agenda that are technical, and we obviously have an opportunity to call staff. We at least some of us often do call staff and get clarifications on things. But again, limited time, it is hard to connect with staff when if you're a little bit less flexible as a commissioner. A lot of commissioners have full-time jobs that are not flexible, and they can't answer their phone during the middle of the day. So they might call a staff member, and then they get a call back, and they miss that because they're in another meeting or something. I mean, I'm sure it's as hard. I've got a fairly flexible job, and so it allows me to maybe answer the phone, but I know other people that don't, and I'm sure that they have the same struggle. So, you hope that people are being as informed as possible, or as possible, but it is difficult to connect. I mean, just on last week's meeting, I traded phone calls with the Director of Fire Services 3 times and never caught him before the meeting, and then had to ask the questions at the meeting. And that's not necessarily a problem, but it is. I'd rather have the time to actually sit down and understand an issue fully before I'm voting on it. And I just don't think that we have enough time to do that.
Any other follow-ups? So Ms. Dolan, you have number 2, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So number 2 is, do you feel there are any, do you feel that any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to commission members by Butte-Silver existing charter need to be revised or removed? And I would add to, maybe if you could also answer Mr. Banderob's comment with regard to the duties, that would be great too. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. I guess to answer that question first, it is an interesting point whether or not it is required, if it's a must do or a may do. I mean, the way that I read it is that it is a thing that we are supposed to do. Mr. Banderob might have a point that we should separate those and make it more clear what the purpose of that is. But generally speaking, I tend to think of the role of commissioner as an elected county visionary. We're supposed to be interested in how the county, or how the policy interacts with our constituents, and then drive that policy to create better outcomes for our county and our citizens. I think the charter does outline that role pretty well, but in practice, we rarely have the time to fully fulfill it. We could be working hand in hand with staff and citizens to develop good policy, things that were, make our citizens interact with our government and feel like we're doing our job, and anticipate the needs of our citizens, and then closely monitor how that policy is being implemented. If we do decide to move to full-time commissioners, I think it would be important to reiterate the policy creation role. I do think that is something we could all do better at on the council. If this body does decide to recommend a move to a city manager and the public concurs, an obvious responsibility of the council would also be oversight of that manager. Section L of the powers and duties of the council specifically states that the council is to annually evaluate the goals set by the chief executive and publish them in the newspaper. I am not aware that we do that. I think that maybe got put in there years ago and hasn't been followed for many years. But again, to Mr. Banderob's point, is that a must or a may? I don't know. But if we do switch to the city manager role, an annual evaluation of the manager would become even more important, I think.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Russell, for being here. That's a great question. I'm looking right at the charter, and 20 years ago, I was on the study commission that was one of our 5 ballot issues that were overwhelmingly approved. And it does say in the very beginning, it talks about powers and duties, include but not limited to the power and duty to evaluate annually the success of the government in achieving goals. Of course, we don't have a paper that is really sufficient enough to do that, but we did ask that be done, and that every year the chief executive first he has to develop his goals and his plan. I call it a plan, and then we would evaluate it on an annual basis. And I can't say that has been done that clearly, but yeah, that's a good question. And the part about the paper, well, we should probably make that a little more definitive. Yeah, and the other thing I would say to Cindy Perdue Dolan's comment too is the charter is designed to be it's supposed to be broad. You know, if you do it too specifically every 10 years, I mean 20 years, think about what if you read things in here that aren't here and that should be and that are here and that don't longer exist. So yeah, 20 years is a long time to go without having a revision of or a review of our government. So, but thank you for being here. I appreciate all of our commissioners here that have jobs and families and have just are doing what you're doing. We appreciate that. Thanks.
Excellent. Other follow-up questions? All right. Mr. Thielen, number 3.
Madam Chair, thank you. Russ, back to the same old question. Could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of our community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time county officials?
Thank you, Commissioner Thielen. I want to be clear about my thoughts on this. I think the answer is yes. I believe 5, maybe 6 full-time or 3/4-time commissioners would be much more effective than 12 very part-time commissioners. Right now, I mean, commissioners don't really have the time to be the driving force of policy in our county. We mostly end up reacting to communications and requests. You know, you look at our agenda in any given week, you know, there might be 20, 30 items on it. If we are expecting commissioners to be paying attention to every single one of those items every week, it would be a 20 to 30 hour job. And I think that that's probably something we need. We mostly react, and I think it is a fair characterization to say that many commissioners have historically not been able to spend the time necessary to really represent their district. That's not always the case. There are many commissioners that have done a really good job over the years, but I think that is true for many. And I think that's a direct result of the fact that everybody up here has that extra job or you know, some other thing in their life that is taking the bulk of their time outside of these chambers. And it does really take a special kind of person that wants to dedicate 20 to 30 extra hours a week on top of working a full-time job to represent a district of almost 3,000 people. If you shrink the number of commissioners and that would double the size of the district. If you go into 6 commissioners, it's going to double the size of the district. I think that becomes a full-time job. Personally speaking, we are inundated with opportunities to learn about the functioning of our government. In any given day, we get 2 to 3 emails inviting us to attend a training, participate in some local meeting, read some report that was given by staff, or some other outside, you know, what we oftentimes contract to get these studies done, just like the fire contract that was, the fire study that was done recently. And if I'm being honest, most of these emails get a cursory glance, and if we're lucky, we have an opportunity to get a presentation at our council meeting that, you know, we can clarify any questions we might have. But most aren't read in depth because we don't have time. I think this is a really missed opportunity to create a better working relationship between the policymaking body and county staff and the executive branch. In order to be maximally effective, in my opinion, I think commissioners need more time to be tuned into the inner workings of our county. The last point on this question would be, if we move to a full-time council, I think we need to pay them a living wage. I know that there's a lot of governments that are paying their council members very low wages. I was looking at them around the state, you know, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. If we are expecting somebody to be full-time, I just don't think that that's a wage that's reasonable. So if we go that route, I think we do need to pay a living wage to attract talented and hardworking people to leave the private sector and run for council. Otherwise, the only people who are going to be able to run for council are going to be retirees and those who are independently wealthy, which is not what you want your council to be made up of, I think.
Excellent follow-up questions. Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Russ, do you believe that neighborhood councils or community councils would help you within your district to hear from your district, the citizens in there better, and know what they want from a government?
Thank you, Director Casey. Excuse me. Been watching too many meetings, old meetings, I guess. Commissioner Casey, I really like the idea of neighborhood councils. You know, obviously, we've talked about it at length as a county for many years. It's in the charter as an option, or as, you know, in the goals of, or the responsibilities and duties or powers and duties of the council is to create them. I don't hate the idea. I think it could be helpful if they were well organized, and, you know, maybe they could be on an ad hoc basis. I don't know exactly how it would work, but I've wanted to, in my district, create, you know, something a digital version of this. You know, find different neighborhoods and create Facebook groups that I can connect to my constituents. Not sure of the legalities of doing this, so I haven't done it yet, but, you know, that kind of thing I think would be helpful for people to be better members of their community and frankly help commissioners know what's going on in their district. Because my district is huge, and I can't drive every road every week. You know, I try to get out into my district and see what's going on, but it's impossible to really know in a district my size.
Ms. McCormick?
Call you Mr. O'Leary. What do you think a living wage would be for a council member? Just a rough estimate.
Commissioner McCormick, I don't know what that would be exactly, but I would say that if you're in the 60,000 range, 60 to 80,000 would be a reasonable wage. You know, it sounds like a lot, and I know that the taxpayers are going to look at that and they're going to balk, and I fully understand that. My pitch to them would be, if you want a professional council, you know, a council that really is paying attention and is being as effective as it can be as the check on the power of the other parts of the government, you need to find folks that are dedicated. And, you know, we have a council now that I think a lot of folks on our council are very dedicated, but it's a lot of work for what it is. And I think if some of those people were able to leave their jobs and be full-time commissioners, I think it would be very effective.
Go ahead.
What do you feel about term limits?
I actually already addressed this in some of my notes here, so I will just address it now. Hold on, where's my notes on this? I think many folks will make the case that institutional knowledge is really important, and I've heard that many times, even talking about national politics, that institutional knowledge is important in limiting how long, or sorry, that it is important to not have term limits because institutional knowledge is important. And I can empathize with that. It would prevent the building and retention of that knowledge in a way. But I do think that there's a strong case to be made that turnover in a citizen legislature like ours oftentimes brings fresh voices into our county and is a vital part of keeping the direction of the government pointed in the same direction as its citizens. Stagnation in government is certainly not something we want, and it's not compatible with the fast-changing world we live in. And I think that's certainly going to be true in the next decade. I mean, things are changing quickly, and having the same government and having people with the same ideas is not going to be sufficient.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is that a yes for term limits
Yes,
or no
for term limits. My personal opinion is probably 3 terms, 3 4-year terms. Maybe you add, depending on how it goes, if you do a mayoral role, maybe you do three terms and then 1 additional term as a mayor. Many counties and cities have versions of this, but 12 years is probably enough on a council.
Okay, folks, are we ready to move to question 4? Okay.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Silk?
Chair. Thank you, Commissioner O'Leary, especially for your candidness and being here tonight. Number 4, if the number of commissioners were to be reduced, what do you think would be important considerations to ensure fair representation amongst residents throughout the geographical boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you. I would not be a fan of at-large districts. I know that that's been floated before. I think that realistically it just ends up diluting the power of the districts that don't historically vote in large numbers. For instance, my district had almost 2,000 voters turn out in the 2024 election. District 8, which represents kind of the middle of town here, had about half that many, about 1,000 voters. So what ends up happening is that at-large districts end up just being decided by the people who vote the most. And I don't think that that's healthy for a county. So I would be not in favor of at-large districts. I do think that the layout of districts, it would be an important point to consider. Similar areas that have, like uptown west of Montana, or west of uptown east, south of Front Street to the interstate south, something that where people have a common cause among the residents is one way to have districts set up, and I think that would be concurrent with the way that we do districts now, is more of a neighborhoods. Another suggestion that I heard, and I can't remember who suggested this to me, so I apologize for whoever's idea I'm stealing here, but would be to have pie-shaped pieces or districts where you start in the center, not the geographic center of town, but the weighted population center of the town, and you draw lines out to the edge of the county to create pie shapes, and then that would allow each commissioner to represent a district that is a representative slice of the county. So dense urban core, maybe slightly less dense edges of town, single-family residents, go a little further out, more rural places like my district, or even further out like Commissioner Callahan's district, the edges, the very rural parts of the county. Right now, Commissioner Callahan and I are the 2 rural districts, and historically speaking, you watch how this body interacts with the rural places. That it's underrepresented. I think the rural folks end up feeling like they're not paid attention to. That may not always be true. I think certainly in various administrations it has been true. But I think having, we're such a small county that we could do sort of a pie slice district and have every commissioner representing a certain part of the county. And I think it would be fairly effective at having a, what's the word? A good representation of people.
Follow-ups? Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Russell, do you have any advice for this commission about how to reach the rural residents and to get their participation, since that is one of your districts, or your district goes out that way? Do you have any advice for us about reaching out to them?
Commissioner Casey, having just come off the campaign trail, so to speak, this last fall, the only way to reach people in rural areas is to go knock on their door. At least that's what I found. I did a lot of that, and it was very enjoyable to get to meet constituents. And obviously, I don't know what you exactly mean by reaching them. If you're wanting them to participate in this body, what this body's goals are. One thought that I've had for a long time is we send out a monthly newsletter as a county in the water bills. Well, if you overlaid the water bill, or the water district with the commissioner districts, you'll notice that District 5, there's almost no water infrastructure in District 5 or District 12, Commissioner Callahan's district. And so all of those residents, roughly 6,000 to 7,000 people in our county, don't get the monthly newsletter. And not that this is in the purview of this body, but those are the kind of things that I think rural people, unless they're out there looking and trying to interface with the county, on a Facebook page or on the county website, they don't get the newsletter every month. They don't know what's happening in the county. So those kind of things, something where we are making a concerted effort to actually reach out to them, like we reach out to other constituents in the county.
Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up or piggyback on Ms. Casey. Do you have a list of emails of your constituents? Do you get in touch with them that way, or anything?
I don't. I mean, I don't have of course, I know many of them. I have phone numbers for many of them, but I don't have an email list. I would love to, though. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay. Question 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Russell, thank you for coming out tonight. Number 5 question is, many Butte-Silver department directors and elected officials have suggested that government efficiency might be better served by an executive branch comprised of a hired city-county manager and an elected mayor. What are your thoughts as to a city-county manager-mayor compared to the current chief executive form? And that happens to be another form of government that we are very interested in hearing about. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. I think that administration is a skill that isn't often paired with political skill. And the things that make someone electable, friendly, social, well-spoken, connected to the community, practical vision for the city, are very different than the things that make a good administrator. Organizational skills, policy implementation, strategic long-term thinking, team building skills, technical expertise, those things are different. And having an elected chief executive, I think, makes it difficult for the community to select someone with the administrative skills that make for an effective government. So I think that splitting the role of the chief executive into a mayor, which would be the political side, and a city manager, the administrative side, would allow the voters to choose a council and a mayor that best represents the political needs of their community, and then having the council hire a professional administrator that can be evaluated regularly as to their effectiveness would be a good thing. This would also provide a clear separation of powers, where the council sets the policy and the manager executes it. A few more lightning round things that I see as positives for the city manager. City manager brings continuity across election cycles. They often have deep experience with complex functions like budgeting, planning, and public works. They can be fired if they underperform, which provides real accountability. And hiring practices would no longer be subject to political calculus. And I know that that's been a contentious issue in our county in the past, and I think it's something for us to think about. Finally, on this question, in small town politics, relationships and name recognition often carry more weight than qualifications do. And this is not a criticism, it's just a reality. I sat in this room listening to Dan Clark from Bozeman talking about this issue several months ago, and a lot of what he said resonated with me about city manager, weak mayor, smaller council. A lot of it resonated with me. I think that he made a strong case for professionalizing the day-to-day administration of our local government. The people we elect should be absolutely setting the vision and direction of our community, but the work of managing departments, implementing policy, and overseeing our long-term operations, I think would be best handled by a manager hired through a transparent and competitive process. And it would give us the best chance of consistency and accountability and administrative competence, regardless of who happens to be in office.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for that answer. Do you have an opinion on if we were to go to an administrator and a mayor, what would be the term of service would you like to see for like an administrator, a contract for 4 or 6 years? And then the same with the mayor, a front-facing political person that's elected, what term would you like to see for that role?
Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. I've seen other counties and cities with 3 and 4 year contracts with managers. I do think that there might be some value in having it staggered in an off year from political years, when there's people running, so that you don't get folks running specifically on fire the guy, because he just happens to dislike the city manager. I don't think that's a very effective way. So, a 3 or a 5 year contract probably would be best, especially if it's staggered off year from any election year. Now, of course, one of the goals with a city manager would be that they can be fired if they're underperforming. So you may not always have that in the off year. It's hard to coordinate that. But I do think that I would lean more towards I wouldn't want to go too short, because it would encourage kind of short timerism, but too long also has the opposite effect. So that kind of 3 to 5 year range I think would be optimal. As far as a mayor goes, I don't see any reason to go more than 4 years. I think the same function as we have now. I mean, you could call it a mayor, you could call it the chairman of the council. It doesn't really matter. It would serve the role of being the head of the body, and to some extent a ribbon cutter and driving policy and vision for the county. So 4 years is I think appropriate for a mayor to be able to set goals and maybe achieve them in the legislative process.
Mr. O'Leary, could you kind of follow up? I think you said this in the beginning regarding in your opinion, the manager would be serving at the pleasure of the elected commission, correct? And then, so how would you see the distribution of powers between executive and legislative branch?
Thank you, Chair Brandel. I listened to Dan Clark's comments about that, and the questioning from Mr. Dennehy. I do agree that it does create a slight imbalance that I haven't fully come to a conclusion about. You know, it would push the balance of power certainly towards the council. You know, maybe there's some other mechanism that can be used to prevent that. I don't know exactly what that would be, but I do agree that the balance of power pushes a little bit more towards the council in that way. Now that said, one of the beauties of this is that the council still has to be elected every 4 years, and so there is a mechanism where if folks are unhappy with the manager and the council is unwilling to fire this person, that they could change the makeup of the council the following election cycle and force the issue. So I think there is still a mechanism there, but to me the positives outweigh the negatives because of all of the, you know, the political, taking the politics out of running our government day to day, I think is super valuable. You know, because we elect a chief executive, they're just subject to political pressure, and you know that's no fault of theirs. It's just the way that the system is set up, and so I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
You did. It's a tricky, sticky wicket for sure. So I just wanted to hear your opinion on that, and if you were thinking through that in terms of how do we make sure that we're still having a balance. So I appreciate your answer there. Any other follow-ups? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this made me think after Raylan's question. We always have questions about how many employees are too many employees in Butte-Silver Bow, but I'm curious to have your opinion with regard to if we were to go to an administrator and a front-facing mayor, the people right below them would be a chief of staff. Would you be inclined to have one for each, or one for both, or you just don't really care? I guess is my question.
Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. I do think that the council should have some staff. I'm not sure that I haven't thought about this exactly, but I do think that the staff for the council should be the staff for the council, not just for the mayor. You know, if it's a body of 5, you know, right now we have a council secretary, and I believe that's it, that reports to the council. That may not be enough if you split the role for a mayor and a city manager. I don't know, I'd have to think about that. As far as the city manager goes, obviously the city manager is going to have department heads, you know, maybe one administrative assistant of some sort that, or a chief of staff, so to speak, you know, which I mean, we in some ways we already have in the current administration. We have a person who is the, you know, deputy to our chief executive, so to speak. So I don't know if a lot would change there. Maybe the council and the mayor may need one additional staff person or something. I don't know. I have to think about that a little bit more, but thank you for the question.
Other follow-ups? All right, thank you. Is there anything? Oh, excuse me, Ms. Cohn.
Just one thing, and this goes for all of you. I noticed that you have some written comments, and all of the commissioners that are here. If you all would like to share those to be put in the minutes, you could email those to me, and I would sure appreciate it. It just lets me get all the correct words in there the right way. So feel
Sounds
free
good.
to email
I will do
those
that.
to me. So
Can
appreciate
you
it.
maybe give us your email address? Would that be possible?
kcon@dsb.mt.gov.
Perfect.
Super easy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
all.
for the time tonight.
Thank you very much. Okay, who would like to go next? Do you want me to pick? All right.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jim Fisher. I serve as District 6 Commissioner in Butte-Silver Bow. I hope to not be as long-winded as the last one, or you'll be here till midnight tonight. So I am available to answer the questions put forth.
Thank you very much. I'll start on the other side with Ms. McCormick, please, if we could.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Our first question is, what unique duties, responsibility, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. Thank you, Commissioners. You know, when you speak of duties, they also are responsibilities and challenges. I mean, they all kind of come in together. I feel that we being the legislative branch of government is kind of a misunderstanding because what we are set to do is to set policy. And a lot of times we get calls, the duties from our commissioners to direct a department head or someone to do other things like, can you get the neighbor's yard cleaned up? Can you get the weeds pulled in the lot next door? Can you have them blade my alley? You know, these are not things we can do. We are not allowed to direct any department heads to do anything like that. Our job is to set policy, and that is what we're doing. And then following up to Commissioner O'Leary's, sometimes that gets a little bit waylaid because of a lot of our advisory boards and you know, committees that feed us information that we have little time to sometimes, you know, evaluate. So as far as that, I think sometimes the public has a misinterpretation of what the legislative branch of government does in Butte-Silver County. So that would be my answer, and I'm open to questions.
Follow-ups? Okay, thank you. Can we take number 2, please?
All right, thank you. Going around this way, that's awesome. Hey, Jim, how are you doing?
I'm good, Cindy. How are you? Thank you.
I'm just fine. Number 2, do you feel that any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to Council of Commissioners by Butte-Silver existing charter need to be revised or removed?
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Thank you, council members. I do feel that there is many things that got to be changed in the government. And as you know, I, with my friend Bob Worley, and some time ago, we put together quite a committee to, you know, revise the charter, revise the government, and do some things like that. And I think the job you're doing now is so important that the voters have elected you to do. It is so important for you to follow through on this, and I'm happy to be here tonight. But to answer your question is, it goes back to the advisory boards and the committees. There's so many of them in the community right now that are making suggestions and to the council, and we take them under advisement. But a lot of times we take them under advisement without proper review. What I feel is without proper review. And a lot of these people are non-elected officials, so they have no, really they have no accountability to the voters of the community. The accountability lies within the commissioners in their district or the chief executive. And, you know, we're going to get into this later in these conversations too, but the executive branch is not only the chief executive, it's the elected people of Silver Bow County, whether it be the auditor, the county attorney, the assessor, you know, that is the executive branch. And when you get into the first question, the second question that we're talking about here, the commissioner of the legislative branch, we're to make policy and set policy. The executive branch has their own duties. And then you get into the judicial branch. I think you people all being elected understand that very well. But John Q. Public sometimes doesn't understand the duties of each branch of government, and it gets a little confusing, even when you get into the judicial branch and, you know, criminality and things that are going on in our community, you know, vagrants and stuff like that. We have little to do with what the sheriff's department can do to regulate that kind of things going on in the community. We can set policy, which we already have ordinances on the books. We've got multiple ordinances on the books that should satisfy the need of the people making the concerns and complaints, but sometimes they're not being followed through, and we as commissioners do not have the authority to enforce, whether it be the executive or the judicial branch. I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Jim, for being here tonight. So my question is, and it's just because you brought up boards and committees and advisory groups, I think we all agree there are a lot of them. And is it something that you think can be streamlined? I just want your opinion on, is too many, too many. I mean, I just don't know how to wrap my head around all of these groups, and I know we keep the charter vague for a reason, but I'm wondering if we get to have so many that they get diluted and their impact isn't as much as they could be, I guess. But what's your opinion on that, or if you even feel like it does need to be streamlined?
Thank you, Purdue Dolan. Thank you, commissioners. Yeah, I think what's happening right now is most of your boards and committees are appointed by the chief executive, not by the full executive branch. I mean, most appointments are made through the chief executive's office, not the executive branch as a group. And when you have that weighted, the way our government's set up right now, the way our government is weighted, with the chief executive being the quote unquote, not sole source, but the major player in appointing boards and committees, it becomes a little weighted in that part of the government. So we as commissioners take that under advisement. But when all of the boards and committees are appointed by the chief executive, mostly by the chief executive, it makes it hard for us to adjust policy afterwards. I mean, we can add amendments to an ordinance or resolution, or we can redline things, and it drags things out a long time. And when you're sitting here at a council meeting and a Wednesday night, public input is minimal. Unless it's a hot item, these chambers are usually not many people in them. But when you get a group that wants to show their solidarity, like we've had in the last few weeks of different things, solidarity means a lot, and the commissioners take that under advisement. And anybody, even as you serve on this board now, when there's a group of people here telling you what they want, it's pretty hard to go against them. So when you're taking a recommendation of a commission or an advisory board, and then you're trying to decide what's best for the community, sometimes it gets a little hectic when you're sitting up here and have a majority of people telling you we should do this or we shouldn't do that, and the advisory board's kind of telling you something else. It gets to be a minute decision to pull the trigger on a yes or no, or how do we want to revise this? And then if you hold something in abeyance, which we do sometimes, when you hold things in abeyance, it draws it out a little further. And as I use the saying all the time, kick the can down the road. You're not always kicking the can down the road when you're holding things in abeyance. You're just trying to get more information. So I hope that kind of referred a little bit to what you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that does. But I also want to ask, with your answer, would you feel better representation on boards and committees if it were not just the commission giving a yay or nay? I know they get on your calendar, or excuse me, your agenda as a yay or nay once those folks are appointed by the executive branch. Would you like to see that changed and moved to the commission to get those folks, or would you like to leave it in the executive and allow those appointments to continue from there, but just have a larger representation in the executive branch?
Thank you, Purdue Dolan. Thank you, commissioners. I think when you get into this a little bit, there's certain boards that have a lot of input and authority. I mean, we have an autonomous board, like the library, the airport. Autonomous boards are different. We have no input to an autonomous board. But boards that we do have input on, I would like to see some of the more powerful advisory boards have a commissioner on them, or a commissioner sit in the meeting so they could report to us. There's a lot of advisory boards and committees that are appointed throughout the community which have no council representation at all on the board. If you had council representation, we could visit a little bit about what happened rather than getting the information in a written order, Friday before the week before the council meeting in an agenda item. When it's on the agenda item is there to be acted on. I mean, not read and acted on all the time, but when an item is on an agenda, which is every other week, committee of the whole, but the regular meeting, we are kind of asked to either concur and place on file unless someone segregates it. I mean, if anybody comes to our meetings, you'll know when you segregate things out of the committee, the regular meetings, when you segregate something, it draws conversation from the council, which is great. And I think in this council, I've served, this is my 13th year now serving on the council. I think this year we've probably seen more segregations in the first 6 months of the year than we've seen in past years because people are a little more involved. But one of the big things about a lot of this is, and I kind of drifting off the subject, but the budget finance people meet every week, the budget finance committee. I served on that for 12 years. That is the most important document that people are going to get. And that tells you what our budget is, where the money's spent. I think someone asked earlier, how do you know where the money's spent? How do you know who's getting what yet? It'll tell you who's getting the money. And when you meet with the budget director, whether it was Danette Gleason or now Karen Hassler, they answer your questions about how the money's being spent and why it's spent. And if not, that committee has the authority. So a committee like a Budget and Finance or Judiciary within the council, they are accountable. Where committees that are meeting not in the council chambers or not open meetings, they have open meetings where the public can attend, but you read them at the end of the agenda, and not a lot of people attend them meetings, and there might be a 7-member board or a 9-member board. They might only get a quorum once a month, I mean, Commissioner Silk can tell you that Fire Advisory Board, sometimes they're lucky to get, the 9 people there. Sometimes they have a tough time in the summertime getting enough people to make conversation and qualifications as needed. So I'm not totally against committees and advisories. I just think we need a little more control of them, and we need to know who's on that board, and who's showing up, and who's doing what, rather than just reappointing them year after year. Thank you.
Ms. Shaw?
I'm going to be the devil in the of information here, but we are trying to stick to either the form of government or the charter. And the question I asked, of course, was there anything specific that you can think of that need to be revised or removed in the charter? And I like your comments about the advisory boards. I can remember how that used to be. But is there anything particular you might think of for that, in particular about the charter?
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. I
Yeah.
appreciate the question. Thank you, Commissioners. I think there is, but I think it's not the proper forum for me to sit up here as a commissioner and say what I think should be changed in the charter. I mean, we went through that years ago. I mean, I have all kinds of files on it. And I mean, there's a lot of things I think should be changed. I mean, we're going to get into the city manager, the mayor type of things like that. We're going to get into some revisions that I think should take place on how the government is run and department heads are selected and things like that. And, I think there's some things there, but I'm just not sure I'm prepared to distinguish individually each one right now in front of a study commission that I feel has the authority to bring these up and then let the community decide what they feel best to do. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make the comment, though, as well, and I totally agree with Cindy about the fact that we have to concentrate on the charter, but we also have a responsibility with the second bucket. The bucket of the charter changes need to be a vote of the people in November of 2026. But there's another bucket of information that we're also working on, which are recommendations for the county to consider and implement that are on the periphery of the charter that may help with effectiveness and efficiency within our county and how we do business. So I think these kinds of questions, even if they're on the periphery, are very important for us to establish things that may be something that we can list out for future county leaders to look at and hopefully implement, that coming from not only our conversations with department heads and elected officials, but also the general public. So I want to just make that comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. Can we take question 3?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher, for being here tonight. Question 3, could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of our community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time city-county officials?
Thank you, Councilmember Silk. Thank you, members of the council. Yes, everyone pretty much from the studies been done realize that 12 people can't even pick a place to go to dinner without 3 of them objecting and 3 staying somewhere else than the other. So 12 members is not the best. And this was devised, I'm sure most of you know, in 1977, the city had like 12 aldermen or 8 aldermen, and the county had 4 commissioners or 3 commissioners. I mean, that's debatable when you talk to the people who are even older than I am. But the thing about this, we ended up with this many people on the board through consolidated government and the charter. This was the piece both sides of the vote would pass. It's old. It's outdated. Our government with 12 members and a chief executive is kind of an outdated form of government. So we may or may not need full-time commissioners or, we maybe need 3/4, Commissioner O'Leary said, or, part-time commissioner of some kind. But our government, the way it is now, would be better served if we had less commissioners. And I know Commissioner O'Leary stated that he didn't really like the at-large bid, but I think that the council should serve the whole community. I mean, certain council members get calls from people in other districts because they're our friends. I mean, Commissioner Thatcher, Commissioner Shea, Mr. Callahan, O'Leary. We all get calls from different people on different things because, they act. So I feel that we as commissioners got to serve the whole community. I mean, this is my district, this is your district. We as commissioners now don't deal that way, but that's not a good form. That's not a good way to do government. I mean, just because I have District 6 and the 2 outlying commissioners, that doesn't mean I should have more say than they say, or my district should do this. I think we ought to work in unity, all as one group, and I'm kind of at the at-large bit. I think that maybe the Butte-Silver Bow should elect 5 or 6 or whatever they decide the amount of commissioners they wanted to do, and I think they should be elected at large. And I know the question's coming up, and I'm referred to it a little bit now, so we can get into it a little bit later. But, if you have a city manager that is educated and can run a city, the mayor could actually be chairman of the council. Right now, the chairman of the council is elected by the council members. And, it's like a paper ballot vote. The nomination process is flawed. The voting is flawed. It's open ballot. Everybody just states what they want. And, we've, in the last 12 years, we've really never had a vote where we've had 2 competitive people wanting to be chairman of the council or vice chairman of the council. We're all in unison there on everything. So I just think that if we all work together for one goal, would be better off. And I'm not sure that answers your question, but I'm open to questions. So thank you.
Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, thanks. Jim, thank you. Hey, I just had one question on the 5 or 6. Do you feel they should be full-time, 3/4 time? What do you feel on that?
There is thank you, Ben, Mr. Thielen. Thank you, Commissioner Thielen. Thank you, Commissioners. I think that's something that's got to be kind of figured out through your study commission and listen to what people have to say. If you had 5 or 6, and then you had the mayor be the chairman of the council or whatever your body decide what worked best for the city or our community, I think that's something that the people will let you know. The people in our government are ready for change. Butte-Silver is ready for change, and they could let you know what they want. I think it's a little budget unwise to say you're going to pay 5 or 6 commissioners $60,000 a year plus benefits. I just don't think that's going to fit into the budget real well right out the gate. So I think that's something's got to be weighed out. Whether they're going to work part-time, like 4 hours a week. But I do think they should meet a little different type of meeting than what we do as commissioners now with 12 commissioners up here on a Wednesday night. And some nights we're here, committee of the whole meetings. The charter says we only have to meet twice a month. We meet 4 times a month. And the committee of the whole, sometimes we're here for 10 minutes. Sometimes we're here till midnight on the regular meetings. So I think this is a subject that the study commission, you people have been elected to do. And I think when the people let you know what they think it is, and you bring the options to the commissioners, and the people get a vote on it, I think we're going to have something there for them to decide, and let the voters decide what they want and what they want to pay for. But things are expensive in the world today, and the budgets are a little high. This year we're going to cut way back because of the COVID money being gone.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think I want to ask this because of what Commissioner O'Leary said too, with the difference between his district and Commissioner Callahan's district being rural. Do you think at large, and I think this is very interesting question about this at-large. I don't know how many counties in the state of Montana have at-large commissioners as opposed to districts, but I wonder if you think that would level the playing field between urban and rural and give the rural citizens of Butte-Silver Bow County more investment in the commission?
Thank you, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan, and thank you, Commissioners. I think an at-large would give the rural people or anyone living anywhere, whether it's rural or in the former what we call the Uptown 400 districts, what I was calling it because that was the Lightning SID. But I think that it would give everyone the opportunity to visit all the commissioners or whoever they want to visit with and bring it to the 5 or 6 that are newly elected. I mean, I think it gives them more power than just trying to get a hold of Commissioner Callahan or Commissioner O'Leary and then have bring their thoughts to the commission, and someone's always selling, somebody's always buying. And when the people from Melrose, Rocker, Divide, them other rural areas, when they bring it, just like out south of town, past Waterline Road, there's a lot of people that live out there now, and there's a lot of people living in them districts that I think really would like to just come visit somebody. And when they came to a meeting to visit the amount of commissioners they have, they'd understand they're being heard by a more diverse group of people than 12 people sitting up here wanting to make a decision about what works best for them. And I mean, we've got some decisions to make here in the near future, so we'll do it with 12 commissioners and see how that works.
Okay, I think you kind of started bleeding into question 4, but Mr. Thielen, if you'd like to take that.
Madam Chair, thank you. Jim, if the number of commissioners were to be reduced, what do you think would be important considerations to ensure fair representation amongst the residents throughout the geographic boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you, Commissioner Thielen. Thank you, Commissioners. I think that it'd be great to have that revision done in the government. I think we should have a city manager that is appointed by the council. We should have a mayor that's elected, as Commissioner O'Leary said. It's kind of a popularity thing, but a mayor elected by the people, and he could serve possibly as the council chairman. So he did have some input on what's going on. And there's been a lot of work done on studies done on these through years. I mean, I and a group of people had 6 powerful attorneys revise all this, and I think Mr. Worley's come to you people and talked about it. And I mean, we've got a lot of information from other communities that have had this type of government, and it goes back to the question 1 about the executive branch is not only chief executive, and the thing is, the city manager, as many know, Commissioner Dole and I both ran for chief executive one time. Commissioner Brandel has run for chief executive one time, and 33,500 people in Butte-Silver Bow. You win the chief executive race with about 8,000 or 9,000 votes. That's really not a majority of the people in making decisions in Butte. I mean, that is leaving a lot of people out that either don't show up or spread the ballot and things like that. So I really think we'd be better served with the city manager, a mayor, and a certain amount of commissioners, whether it be 5 or 7. I don't know that 3 is enough, but I mean, that's something I look forward to the people I'm dealing with here now, the study commission, to come up with the answers, and we will support it. I will support it. I think the community will support it, and make a decision on what you feel is the right amount of people to do, because you're hearing from a lot of people. I think the study commission has probably done more in 6 months than been done in this community in a long time. And I think you people that were elected by the people, and you're working for the people, and I think your answers are going to come out of here with some real good distinction of what the community's looking for.
Thank you. I think you answered both 4 and 5. I want to go back to 4, though, because you were recommending at-large districts. Is that correct?
Thank you, Commissioner Brandel. Yes, and I mean, I'm not stuck on that. You'll always hear Commissioner Fisher makes one decision, but then I'll weigh it out and make another. But I'm open-minded about that stuff. But I do think that you'd get more people to vote. I mean, like Commissioner Larry said, 2,000 people showed up in his district to vote. Very competitive race. He and his opponent were both very popular people. It was a close race. They both run. He referred to District 8. I don't know if there's an opponent in there, but not as big as race as you see. But that all brings out the vote. However many people are in your district and who the popular candidates are brings out the vote. And, you know, in my District 6 out there, I've had anywhere from, you know, 1,500 people show up to vote to 800 people show up to vote. And, you know, sometimes they just don't show, and unless somebody's on the ballot they really want to go vote for. So, yeah.
Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, thank you. Jim, so Russ referred to that kind of a pie type deal. What do you think about that for the districts?
You know, I've not really thought about that. I've not really studied it. I think it's got, I'm just not certain that'll work, you know, when you go into the center of town and start vetting it out, because there's a lot of difference between Centerville, Big Butte, up in this area here, in District 6, which is in the heart of town where I'm at there, and then you get over towards the racetrack area. You know, there's a lot of diversity in the community, and I do think that if there's an issue on the ballot where people want to show up for a certain district, they're going to show up. And I think if you want to get your rural people to have more input in government, I think you got to have an at-large bid rather than pie shaping it out, because I think you get into this Colorado Street area down here and, you know, into the around Platinum and Platinum and Montana. I think there's some real diverse areas in there that we've all been working on for a long time to, you know, improve the housing in there and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Commissioners, are there any other follow-up questions? Mr. Fisher did answer number 5, I believe. So if we're comfortable moving on, is there anything that you wanted to add, Mr. Fisher?
I thank you all for your duties and keep up the good work of the community, and I look forward to getting your first report here in the near future. And I looked at your calendar and it looks like it's coming out soon, so good luck and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Ms. Shea.
Hello, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we'll start with Ms. Casey with number 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Shea, our first question tonight is, what unique duties, responsibilities, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
Thank you, Commissioner Casey, for the question. I'll talk specifically about some issues in my district. Blight is a big issue. Stormwater issues are a big problem in District 2. Drugs are a big problem. Enforcement is an issue. And there's a large portion of citizens who are disengaged. I have a pretty easy district, to be honest with you. District number 2 is the best, by the way, just for the record. But overall, what I see is a populace that's pretty disengaged, like Commissioner Fisher spoke about. You can roll 10 bowling balls through here sometimes on council night. You're not going to hit anybody but a staff member. So public participation, I think, is a challenge for all of us.
Excellent. Are there follow-up questions? Ms. Shea, I had a question regarding, we've heard this from pretty much every elected official, and then as well as, I'd say, every manager that's come forward or department head that's come forward. The public participation piece is a challenge. Do you have any, and we're experiencing that too, we're trying to hire a public outreach person to help us. Do you have any suggestions or ideas?
Well, in a perfect world, we would have a bucket of money that we could all do that too. But as public officials, every one of us has an opportunity, and if not an obligation, to bring the government to the people. Go to events, show up at ribbon cuttings, or wherever we can, or just make yourself generally available. Put out that attitude that you're open to take a phone call or receive an email or answer a question. So I think that things like that can be done, where you're bringing more of the government to the people, educating the people on how local government works, what Mason's rules of order look like, educating people about that, because coming before the council can be a little intimidating for people. They don't know when to speak. They get up here, they're nervous and fidgety, and we really don't want people to feel like that when they come before us, because we're partners in the community. So I think just more public outreach is the answer, more public education.
Thank you.
Yes.
Follow-up questions? Okay. Ms. Dolan, can you take number 2, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, I certainly can. Thank you, Michelle, for being here tonight. We really appreciate all of you to answer some questions. Do you feel that any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to commission members by Butte-Silver-Bow's existing charter need to be revised or removed?
Thank you, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. Thank you for the question. No, I don't. I do think that we need to seriously consider community councils. I think that that is a duty. I don't know where Mr. Vandross went, but I think a duty is a duty. I don't think it's a maybe we'll do this and maybe we won't. I think that that is one additional way that you could drive public participation in their local government is by getting those smaller groups where you're at a park and you're just visiting with people. You're not having this parliamentary procedure where people are getting really nervous or don't understand, so they kind of forget what they're talking about. So I think the duties that are outlined in the charter are reasonable. I think they're fair. I think they're accurate. I would like to see us push towards community councils.
Follow-up?
I had my mic on. Thank you. So to follow up on that, what kind of, if any, with community councils, anything that's binding, or would you just like the community councils to be just information-based and to give a commissioner in that area food for thought without it being a binding like resolution or anything? What are your opinions about that?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. You know, I don't know that I have a strong preference either way. My gut check is that information pipeline, that is the pipeline for people to get information to not only to each other, but who better to interact with your neighbor than you, or your neighbor with you. And so those conversations between neighbors can become bigger conversations, and then however those councils would get elected or appointed, then that information could be a pipeline to the commissioner. So I guess I do have an opinion on that. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Mr. Thielen, are we ready for number 3?
Madam Chair, I am. Are you ready for number 3? Hi, Michelle. Hey, thanks for being here. Could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of our community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time city-county officials?
So that's a hard question for me to answer. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Thielen. Because we don't know. We can think it would be better. We can think that it might not be better. All I've heard is the reduction of the number of commissioners and then making them closer to full-time. I've not heard anything about keeping the number of commissioners, maybe making them half-time. So you have that income. You're not fully dependent on your full-time job outside of your job on the council. We've all been there. Well, not we've all been there, but you guys are there now a little bit with the duties that you're doing. It can be difficult. It's not insurmountable, though.
Thank you. I think you raise a good point in terms of, you know, our goal here is to study different ideas and try to come up with the best understanding of what ideas might or might not work, and then bring that forward to the population to vote on in terms of if we are recommending a change. So it's true, we don't know. We don't have any data yet. So that is a very good point. Maybe there's assumptions within the conversation that we should be considering as well. Other follow-up questions for number 3, Mr. Thielen? And then I'll take you, Ms. Dolan, please.
Yeah, just thinking about that, taking the 12 commissioners and making them half-time, what would you think would be a fair rate of pay for that?
Thank you, Commissioner Thielen. Could you restate the question? I think I missed the very end.
Yeah, so if you take the 12 commissioners and make you guys half-time, right? What do you feel that would be a fair rate of pay for the commissioner?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thielen. probably more than the $1.44 an hour that I make now. I'll share with you. Thank you for the question, though. I don't know. I mean, it would require probably a compensation study, looking around to other like-sized communities, other combined city-counties. You'd want to look at whatever data that you can find that would be an accurate comparable to see what that would look like. That would be my first, that would be the first thing I would do.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you. And this is interesting to have this as a point of thought for possible 12 and halftime. But I'm going back to Commissioner O'Leary's point about getting a handle on all of the information that you're given week to week, and to be ready for a commission meeting on a Wednesday night. I think that would be even more duties and more things put on your shoulders if you do have a full-time job as a commissioner, and having that as halftime versus trying to do it now. So do you still think that's feasible?
I thank you for the question, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan. I am not in the equation. So what I'm saying is that this could be something that is looked at and analyzed to see if it's feasible. There may be people out there who have half-time jobs and are looking for another half-time job who have a passion for working for the people or serving the people. So for myself being in the equation, I'm not basing my opinion on what I would want or like or for myself in my own situation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Michelle, for being here. It feels weird that, I used to be there and used to be here. But on the same note as Cindy was talking about, Cindy Purdue-Dolan, so halftime, I mean, it's one thing to be on a stipend like we are, $1.47 an hour, or not we, but I was, and full-time. And so it's pretty easy to keep track of that because you either one or the other. But halftime, I'm not sure how you'd keep track of that. I mean, you're elected, you can't really be made to do much of anything, you know what I mean, as far as that goes, and you'd get a check. And I think it could cause a little bit of, sticky wicket in a way with people thinking they did more than you did. And, once you set a time. But my other question here is, and on the same note, if you got part-time commissioners, and again, if you have a full-time job or someone could not run if they know it's just a half-time kind of a job, and taking the or the neighborhood community councils in the equation, I think that would add an even heavier. I know how that was when we talked about community councils. It would require, and it does say we authorize. It means we let someone else do it, or we give permission to. It's authorizing. It's kind of a fine line on that definition, but. The commissioner would be required to have something to do with that, drawing that together and making it a workable unit, having community councils. So I would add that into the question as the equation of time needed to do a good job at authorizing, and then, of course, you'd have to help facilitate. I'm sure in some way a person would have to do that. I just thought I'd ask you what you thought about that added little layer. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Shaw, for the question. We could authorize community councils now with, the stipend model that we have right now. And I think that anticipating workload is pretty difficult. And I believe that all of the commissioners do their very best to be educated on the things that come before them. Are there things that certain people are more informed on than others? Sure, because that's their area of interest, right? So my particular area of interest is personnel matters, HR functions. Bring me a policy manual. Ooh, I'm gonna love that. I'm gonna eat that up. But everybody has kind of their areas of interest. So I think that I think I can't stand here and predict the future. I can't stand here and define what type of candidate would run for a half-time position, what their employment status would be, what their family status might be. So I think that it's important that it's just an option that we talk about. You know, I think having a full-time, I think having paid full-time commissioners could also be a barrier to people running. Because if not everybody is cut out to compete for their job every 4 years, right? Competing for my job every 4 years is daunting right now, and even it's not about the pay for me, it's about the public service, as it is for all of you guys as well. So when you're talking about what could the barriers be, I feel like it could be a barrier either way. Do you mind if I grab my water? Thank you, sorry.
You're good. Thank you. Any follow-up questions there? Okay. All right. Mr. Silk, number 4, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Shea, for being here tonight. Question number 4, if the number of commissioners were to be reduced, what do you think would be important considerations to ensure fair representation amongst residents throughout the geographical boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you, Commissioner Silk, for the question. I don't believe you can get fair representation with at-large members. I strongly believe in the districts. And the reason I believe that is we rely on each other currently in our current form. If somebody from Melrose calls me about something, the first call I'm going to make is going to be to Commissioner Callahan. Because he's the one with the pulse of that district. And I would expect that same thing from the commissioners in other districts if they get a call about Father Sheehan Park, that they call me. And I can work with that because I may already have information that somebody doesn't know. So I think we do a really great job of that on our council. We collaborate really well. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of ego where you know what I'm saying, where everybody just seems to work pretty well together. So I don't think at-large members are helpful. I also think that at-large members could potentially come from one area of the city. And that's going to be the area where people are better at fundraising, or they have independent money where they can just run on their own money to get into office. And so I don't think that's what Centerville wants necessarily, unless they have equal representation. When you're looking at poverty levels in Butte, I think it's really important to have a good cross-section of representation there. I think that we would end up with less diversity, in short, for that. I think we need to be mindful of the transition period. I'm not opposed to or against or for changing the form of government. There's a couple things in that Butte people don't like, and one is change and the other is the way things are. So it's, you know, it's really up to the people. But I think we need to be mindful and be very clear about it, about explaining how expensive a transition can be and how long it can take, and what happens in that meantime. What does the representation of each district, each person, what does that look like when everything's kind of in flux a little bit? So that's one of the concerns that I do have.
Follow-up questions? Okay. All right, number 5.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, Michelle, thanks for being here tonight. We really appreciate you. Many Butte-Silver Bow department directors and elected officials have suggested that government efficiency might be better served by an executive branch comprised of a hired city-county manager and an elected mayor. What are your thoughts as to a city-county manager-mayor form of government compared to our current chief executive commission form?
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Thank you for the question. It could work. It can work it's working in other cities. I don't want to say that it couldn't work here, because it could work here. I'm not sure that adding another layer of bureaucracy and concentrating that power in the legislative branch is a great idea. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be vetted out before we would even put this to the voters, for sure. And I trust that you very smart people up here are doing all of that work. In fact, I know many of you, so I know you are. I think we need to envision what are some positive outcomes that could come of a city manager form of government, and also we need to envision what are some negative outcomes that could come to fruition. The average tenure of a city manager is 3 to 4 years. What happens in a community that's our size is you might find a city manager that's got a little bit of experience, but they're here to get a little more experience so they can move to a bigger area. And that bothers me, honestly, that Butte could be used as a stepping stone. I also can't do anything about that. We may get somebody who's great and can just, be great right out of the gate and stay forever. I'm not sure that it's efficient to turn over a city manager every 3 to 4 years. I think that what we need more than anything is a higher engaged citizenry and public participation. I think that is the key to government functionality. I think there are a lot of things that we could do immediately as far as getting more public participation. You can lead the horses to water, kind of. I don't know that public participation, if nothing is done, would be any different than it is now if we had a different form of government. I know that the grass always sounds greener on the other side, and I know that this is a very popular idea right now because people in general are unhappy with their government at all levels. I just don't know that making a large change all at once is the answer, and that's kind of more why I would think about easing into it, doing it a little bit exploration with the size of the council, just the compensation of the council, and maybe start there. And having half-time commissioners, it may weed some of the current commissioners out, and that's okay. That may happen. We all run the chance of that happening anyway.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let me ask you this. With regard to an administrator that is that answers to the commission, or maybe let me back up. Saying it's in piecemeal or to do it in stages is kind of hard in our capacity as a study commission because we only have a certain amount of time and only once every 10 years if the citizenry want us to do. So here we are 20 years later and trying to do it again. So I think we have the ability and the requirement of doing as much as we can in one fell swoop. But I want to ask if you think it's more prudent in working with department heads to have an administrator that is accountable to the commission. And I think there's a lot of folks here in Butte-Silver Bow County who feel that while they have a district commissioner, they feel underrepresented because it's a one-party town. And that is just fact. It's not an opinion. It's just the way it is. And but we live here because we love Butte, and that's awesome. And I continue to do that, and will do that hopefully till the end of my days. But do you think that having an administrator that is a professional, and I understand your point about it can be few years or many years. It's an unknown, but. So you feel like the administrator, chief executive that we have now is the best way to move forward?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. I think what we have now can work better. There's no doubt about that. If we had a city manager form of government, I would probably think that could work better too, because we can always work better, right? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And it could be as simple as that. I think that now, when you said now can work better than the other, but I think we just don't know because we haven't experienced the other. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Shea, if I were to take this out of specifics and put it into looking at what the problem is, and knowing that we haven't looked at it for 10 years. And so we're feeling like there's a lot to look at and a lot to examine. There's two problems that keep coming forward to us. That the one is efficiency, that getting things through council or government, or whether it be, Mr. Fisher was talking about weeds and potholes, getting those things answered and addressed, or getting a permit, or having a contract to get approved, whatever it is. Efficiency is coming up over and over. And then the second thing that continues to come up is transparency. So when we've been thinking about how to solve those two problems, the solutions we've been given are, well, could we reduce the size of the commissioners so that you become leaner and meaner, you become a harder working group working together, maybe we give you more time to do your job instead of it being a volunteer / stipended $1.43 an hour job. So that's a solution that we've been considering. And then the other thing with transparency and efficiency is looking at that, again, the city manager position and a mayoral position. I think our chief executive said that his job is exceedingly hard because he has to be at all the things, all the ribbon cuttings and events, as well as trying to truly do the governance work and executing the ordinances that you guys have put forward. So thinking in that question of, or that mindset of the problems we're trying to solve, what would you recommend, or do you have any other ideas or other ways of looking at it?
Thank you, Ms. Brandel, for the question. Government's never going to be efficient. That's just a fact. It was never designed to be efficient. It's designed to be just and fair. And I know all of you guys heard that from Dan Clark. I learned that from him many, many years ago, and it has stuck with me because it's true. A city manager or a chief executive, neither of them have the autonomy to be able to push things through without going through the council. They don't have that power now. There are certain things under law that have to go through the council. So just as the chief executive can't do that autonomously now, neither can a city manager. So that would be where I would go with that. Could we improve processes? Probably. Like I said, are there, we bump up against state law with permitting and things like that. Is there room for efficiencies within the local government on our ordinances? Probably. Commissioner Casey can probably think of 10 or 20 of them right off the top of her head, and so could Mr. Silk. But so I think that if our eye is toward efficiency, we need to turn our eye towards efficiency now. We can still move forward with this process. I love the people having their say. The people deserve their say. They elected you guys to do the work that you're doing, and I have a ton of respect for that. And you're doing a great job, by the way. But if we have an eye for efficiency, we can do that in a lot easier and cheaper ways.
So you were saying like the council should now take on these efficiency challenges and looking at the ordinances, et cetera?
Yes, and we do that in partnership with the executive branch.
And maybe it's that educational piece with our constituency, understanding the process and how long it takes to do these things.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would like to go back to what Commissioner Fisher said about, the potholes working through the commission. They don't work through me. If someone calls me for a pothole, I direct them to the Report a Pothole on the website, or I give them a phone number that they can call, because I feel like it's my job to educate them how to make their government work for them. Could I call the chief executive and say, hey, I got a call about a pothole on Edwards? I could, but that doesn't feel good to me, just because I have a line to the chief executive. That doesn't feel good to me. The public deserves to have a responsive government, and when the public participates, the government is responsive.
Excellent. All right, is there any other follow-up questions? Ms. McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Shea, for being here tonight, and I really appreciate your candor and your willingness to answer our questions. But one thing I'm curious about is what you think about term limits for Council of Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner McCormick. Thank you for the question. I think the voters should decide when they're tired of an elected official.
Excellent. Any other follow-up questions? Ms. Shea, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just wanted to thank you all for doing this work. It's very hard work, I know. The work that you guys are doing is 20 years worth of catch up for study commissions. So I'm very proud of the work you're doing. I'm very happy with the slate of commissioners who were elected. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I like how you all have organized yourselves. I appreciate that.
First come, first serve. I am Commissioner Thatcher. I represent District 3. Excited to be here tonight and appreciate you guys having us come out.
All right, excellent. So I will start on Ms. McCormick's side, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. We'll start with the first question. What unique duties, responsibilities, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. Similar to what Commissioner Shea said, I'll probably echo a lot of what she said since our districts are so close. I run the same issues, blight, speeding's a big one in my district. I get a lot of calls about that. Very big one is, again, the lack of understanding about how the government works, its processes, how long things take, as Ms. Brandel just alluded to. And then some of the other people have touched on just being able to coordinate and act as a liaison. I know Commissioner O'Leary talked about that. I see that more as an opportunity within my district. It's not a challenge to me. I think that that's one of the unique opportunities that I can be in contact with the directors, with department heads, people within departments, so I can educate myself as well to best educate the general public and I guess make decisions on their behalf. But also to what Commissioner Shea said, I do try to explain how things work when issues arise and such like that. So I find that as a unique opportunity. I wouldn't say a challenge.
Follow-up questions? We're getting efficient. Joking.
No, we're trying.
Question 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Thatcher, it's good to see you.
Please call me Hattie. It's
I
so
will.
weird.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Patty. Yep, that'd be you. And you're one tough commissioner. These little young, sweet-faced ones, she's a tough one, and I'm glad because you have an area that, like you say, blight, speeding, lack of knowledge, and I really appreciate that you can call the department heads and you actually get a relationship, and it's so important to get that. And I always used to thank them for answering the phone. Okay, so number 2, do you feel that any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to commission members by Butte-Silver existing charter need to be revised or removed?
I don't necessarily think so. I know the question has come up about whether, Mr. Vanderhop's question. In my opinion, when I decided to run for council, that is the job. What is lined out, the duties, all of that, that is a job. To me, it's not mandatory or not, that is just what it is. As far as things being changed, no. I know we talked, and Commissioner Shea and I were talking about the annual evaluation. I believe Commissioner O'Leary brought that up. Commissioner Shea and she mostly made a good point. The performance budgets are outlined every year. I mean, I feel like that's a sufficient way to really evaluate how our government is operating, the chief executive's goals. But as far as anything else, no, I don't. I think everything is pretty accurate, outlined well, and I believe that it is, if a commissioner chooses to run for the position, that it's their duties to perform all responsibilities.
Thank you.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher, Hattie, for
Thanks,
being here
Chad.
tonight. Question number 3, could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of our community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time city county officials?
I think that this is a difficult question. The first thing I would like to think about and that would be presented in my mind is the cost of such a thing. I would hope that that's heavily evaluated, obviously I'm sure you guys will, before that recommendation could be made. I mean, jumping from whatever dollar rate Commissioner Shea said to now full-time at $60,000 to $80,000, like Commissioner Larry said, that's going to cost the taxpayers a lot more money, in my opinion. But also, I think that it's a concern to me, at least, that if we went to this form of government, and Commissioner O'Leary had talked about how we don't have enough time, it is the duty, in my opinion, my attitude, my effort to complete the job that I was elected to do, and that is to be updated on the information, that is to read the agenda, to read the documents associated with the agenda. And I don't think that lowering that and making it full-time, I think we could still run into the same issue. I think that commissioners could still be elected and opt to perform those duties to whatever caliber they wish to perform them, which is concerning to me because then we're paying them a lot more to do the same amount of work that we could potentially be doing right now. Let's see. I know that term limits is going to get brought up too, Mary. I wrote that down. I don't necessarily believe that we have to have term limits right now. When you have somebody like Commissioner Shaw, who was on council for several years, and we have several members that have been on for a while, institutional knowledge is a huge thing. And I think if we opted to go to 6 and they were full-time, we run the risk of having a brand new council with very limited knowledge of, the functions of the Council of Commissioners, the legislative body, really the function of the government itself. I know when I ran, I had a general idea, and I'm still learning on the job. And I think that if we just throw 6 feet to the fire, I think or I guess 12 feet to the fire, I think that we run several risks with that.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Hattie, for being here. So I guess I'd want to drill down a little bit on you're thinking that 12 and part-time is okay or fine, but I appreciate your attitude about costs and wanting to make sure that the taxpayer gets what they're buying. But the cost-benefit analysis, I would think, is something that, how do I want to phrase this? Do you think it's efficient enough and the ability that you have currently as 12 commissioners part-time to get enough information and be ready on a Wednesday night versus a full-time commissioner who could have office hours in the courthouse and people could come in and out and know that someone's there dedicated as a commissioner who are making policy changes for Butte-Silver Bow? How do you weigh that? I mean, because I think that's an important idea with what we've heard so far in all of our deliberations and questions to department heads, et cetera, wanting more information back and forth between commissioners versus the folks who work in the courthouse.
I think that I guess I would have a unique perspective on that because I do work a full-time job. Granted, it is flexible, but I don't have any issues obtaining the information that I need to obtain, and I don't have any issues informing myself on what is on the agenda, and I don't believe most of the commissioners do. I think that your cost analysis question would best be suited to be presented to the public. Do they feel like they are receiving the benefit of 12 commissioners part-time, or do they feel like they would benefit from this? I don't know. I mean, that's obviously your recommendation, and it would, if that is your recommendation, it obviously would go to the ballot. But I just think that cost is constantly and should be at the forefront of my mind and of the general public's. And in a community where people already live on fixed incomes and, our poverty level is at whatever rate it is, I think that that's certainly the cost analysis would have to be something that would be presented to the voters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up. Yeah, I think that one of the things I heard constantly and just is the fact that I think a lot of folks, and this is what I heard when I was a commissioner, is that the commission seemed almost like a rubber stamp because it was always 11-1, 12-0 on so many issues at the end of or during a Wednesday evening, and it was almost just like, okay, what do you have, and we'll just okay it, instead of really digging in, like Commissioner O'Leary said, to really dig in and have a real idea of what those policies are and what the work is from a department head. So there's that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perdoodle, and I definitely agree with that. I had written down something you had asked Commissioner O'Leary about, you know, the work being done by department heads as well and how we are kind of left out of that work. But I guess, in my opinion, why do we hire department heads at the wages that we do and not trust the work that they're doing? And I think that when they present to council, I still have full ability to consult them about anything that related to the work they're doing. But in my mind, I have absolutely no business leading public works. I don't know a thing about it. And so I do trust that we have to rely on the people that we hire and put in charge to help the Council of Commissioners make informed decisions.
Catching up writing. Any other follow-ups? Okay, question 4, Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, thank you. Hattie, thank you for being here. If the number of commissioners were to be reduced, what do you think would be important considerations to ensure fair representation of amongst the residents throughout the geographic boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you, Commissioner Thielen. Again, similar to Commissioner Shea, I don't believe that at-large districts would be the best decision. I like knowing, I drive through my district, I like knowing what's going on in my district. I try to keep informed by doing such things. I don't have any neighborhood councils like some of the other districts do or that wish to have. And frankly, I do think that I would probably benefit from them and hear more of their concerns. Typically, when I hear from a constituent, it's in the form of an email, and it's something that can be fixed pretty promptly, but obviously I'm sure that there are other issues within my district that I could be missing, which is why I think that if we kept it 2 districts, if that was the recommendation, I think that we get a more accurate and fair representation of our people and our areas, and then the people also get an accurate representation for themselves too.
Ms. Thatcher, can I go back? Do you think that 12 commissioners is a good model, or would you reduce it? Would you keep it the same?
Again, I think that this goes back to representation. I can understand why people think it's excessive, for sure. I just worry that sometimes we run the risk, and this is, I guess, true with any position, any level of government, that we run the risk of people not being in it for the right reasons. For example, I think that all the commissioners up there, I don't run to get paid the stipend that we did. I honestly, when I first ran this, how uneducated I was. I didn't know we got paid. And it's just something like I think that people should do in the best interest of our community and in the best interest of their neighborhoods. And so I think that if we limit that, we also limit the fact that some people, again, might not have that representation. They might not have that desire to sit up to council and give the best of their abilities on behalf of Butte and for her people. So,
thank you. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to ask, because you're such a young person, and I'm not anymore, we continually talk almost every single week about how to engage people. And I know that's always a struggle with commissioners as well. How do I get more people in my district to care or to just make the effort to contact you about an issue? Do you have any suggestions on how we can engage with folks beyond here?
Thank you, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan. I know it's said over and over again, but social media is such a huge thing amongst my generation, amongst the younger generations. And granted, you're not going to hear the opinions at the polls of the younger generation right now, but that's who it's going to affect. And in order to inform them, social media is your best asset, in my opinion. You know, I just got on Facebook while this kind of was in passing earlier, and you know, just even a simple Facebook page, that's what I kind of used, and mine's not up to date by any means on just my district, and I could be better about that for sure. But I feel like this study commission attracts and great generations that are older than me and who have seen the effects of government and how it operates and such. But I also think that if we can attract the younger generations to be more involved and to educate them, then we are positioning ourselves for a much better future on behalf of our children, on behalf of our young adults, and then hopefully on behalf of the generations that are older than me that have their time left here in Butte.
Do you want to take question 5?
Falling down on the job, sure. So number 5 is many Butte-Silver Bow department directors and elected officials have suggested government efficiency might be better served by an executive branch comprised of a city-county manager and an elected mayor. What are your thoughts as to a city-county manager, mayor form of government versus the current chief executive form?
Thank you, Ms. Purdue-Dolan. Again, cost. I think that that's a huge thing. I think that if we have a city manager and a mayor plus 6 commissioners or whatever the study commission opts to recommend, that's going to cost more than what the taxpayers are paying right now. And I think that just that would be my biggest concern, is just to ensure that message and the cost itself would be relayed on even before it hit the polls about how much money this is going to cost during the transition, how much it'll cost, after and when we're in this form of government. As far as efficiency, there are 100 things that I get frustrated on a year at least that we move so slowly, and it's just the idea of government. I think nothing, as Commissioner Shea alluded to, I always say nothing in government moves quickly, but I think if we continue, if that's the attitude and stance that we take, that we just push everything through and we don't care, that there's a lot of room for error. And like in planning, for example, people get frustrated with the permitting process. Well, there's reasons why those things are in place and why they do take a bit of time. I'm certainly not a planning director nor a contractor, but obviously there are state laws and federal laws and all of that we have to follow in order to position everybody to be in a safe position. And I guess that would be my concern, is that I think that I just kind of skipped a part. But just really the overall cost, that's what I would like to say to that. The overall cost of it. I think that having a mayor just for face seems like a waste of money to me. In my opinion, whoever's in charge should always just put the best foot forward. And I understand that it hinders the operations, like Chief Executive Galler has said, that he has to be here and here and here, and doesn't have time or it takes a lot of time to stay up on the operations of the government. But in my mind, that's the reality of government too. I mean, that's the President of the United States, that's our governor, that's how it works in my mind.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question with regard to costs, and I'm glad you consider that a top issue, because it always is. But I would like your opinion on, in past study commissions, there was discussion about streamlining the executive branch, specifically the auditor and the assessor, because most of the duties are now out of Helena. And so most counties don't have those positions anymore. Would you be of the opinion to help with cost issues if commissioners were to become full-time, to streamline other folks within our government?
Thank you, Ms. Perdue-Dolan. Yes, I think that there are certainly inefficiencies that can be considered. I think that our current assessor, Tim Cassidy, he just got elected. I think he's doing a great job. I think that our auditor, Wendy McGrath, has done a great job. Like you said, there are different avenues to, in the event that we opt to go a different route that's going to cost the taxpayers, and if that's an efficiency that can be looked at, then I would definitely be for that.
All right, that concludes our questions, unless there's another follow-up. I think Ms. McCormick, she answered the term limit question. We're good. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Ms. McCormick, in your letter, Ms. Khan, from Dinah McLeod, she had talked about the budget and finance shows the totals, but not who gets paid what. I'd just like to go on record and say that the expenditure lists are listed on the website every week, and they do show who and how much we pay. So just for that record. But that is all. Thank you guys. I appreciate this. It's been interesting hearing the questions and interesting to hear the perspectives of the other commissioners, and you guys meet a lot, and so I wish you guys well, and I'm looking forward to what you guys come out with. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, I think you're up.
Good evening. My name's Thomas Walker. I'm a commissioner for District 11.
So Ms. Casey, would you like to kick us off, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Walker, for being here. The first question is, what unique duties, responsibilities, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
Okay. I'd say, I don't really have the experience that a lot of the other commissioners have. I mean, I've only been on one term. This is my first term. And I don't know all the departments, so I get a lot of emails, a lot of calls saying, clean up this yard, or fix this, or fix that. And I don't really know who to go to a lot of times, so I have to rely on my fellow commissioners. When I first started, I think when I first got elected, the first week, the chief executive's office sent me a email and said, you need to come in and meet with the chief executive. And he came in and asked me, what do you want to accomplish? What are you, and things like that. And then he asked me, he said, if you have any issues with any of my department heads about, cars or cleanup, just things like that, come to me and I'll go to where they have a different relationship. They know each department head, and they can go to them personally. So a lot of times I have to ask them rather than go to the chief executive and let him deal with all of it.
Follow-up questions? Okay. Ms. Dolan, number 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tommy, for being here tonight. Do you feel any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to commission members by Butte-Silver Bow's existing charter need to be revised or removed?
I think there's room for improvement, for revision. Just things that I've noticed, right now, because I do have a full-time job, so this isn't my full-time job. And it takes up a lot. Like Commissioner Shea said, she makes $1.47. I think I'm down to about $1.35 an hour right now. It's a lot of work. And, there's could be some improvement in a lot of it. I do. And I'm open to that.
Any follow-up questions? Okay, Mr. Thielen, number 3.
Madam Chair, thank you. Tommy, thank you for being here. Could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of the community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time county officials.
Okay, and I've thought about that a lot. You know, at the stipend we're paid now, you know, you don't get into the job because you want to make money. And I think by doing, you know, as a full-time commissioner, those positions, you'd have people that get in it because they're like, oh, I can make this money, or, you know, I can make. So I think you'd have more people running and getting into the office for the wrong reasons, I think. Not so much that they want to help their community or, you know, the citizens of Butte.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So do you think there are any positives with a full-time commissioner? Can you tell us some positives on that versus negatives?
Let me think. I'm not really sure I could think of one offhand, but you know, before I ran, I would call a lot of times to the courthouse, and you know, I'd have a issue, and it may not be in my district, someone else's. You know, it may be a little easier if you could talk to one person that kind of, you know, rather than say, well, let me connect you with this commissioner, and let me connect you with, you know, so kind of streamline everything a little more, maybe.
So, Mr. Walker, do you feel that you have enough time? You said you had a full-time job. Do you feel that you have enough time to do your job effectively as a commissioner and getting all the information you need?
I think I could use more time. I mean, every night I work from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, and then when I get home, I'm reading emails, and I have, you know, and answering emails, answering calls. And then everybody that calls me, I write them a little handwritten note thanking them for their comments and mail them out. So there's always more time I could use to, and like when we're getting ready for the meetings, to go on and read over all the information. I come in early. When we have the meetings on Wednesday night, I always come in early so I can review all the finance and budget things and go over those and take more notes, you know.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Question 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Walker, for being here. Question number 4, if the number of commissioners were to be reduced, what do you think would be an important consideration to ensure fair representation amongst residents throughout the geographical boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Let me think. I'm not really sure about that. You know, I kind of like the way it's done now, because I think, you know, everybody is more fair that way. I think reducing the number down to where you had a larger district, I'm not really a big fan of that idea. You know, so I don't have any ideas really on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Tommy, thank you for being here. I know Tommy and I had a lot of discussions when he started. District 1 is right where we're sitting right now, and it's huge, and it's very compacted. Everyone's 30 feet, you know, 30-foot lots, and I really feel I could always feel his frustration a bit, because there's a lot going on up here, and some people, I think, when they run for an office, like I think Michelle said, they have no idea what really is involved in it. And you've really given it the, you know, the old college try, and it's very demanding. And of course, I didn't mind helping Tommy whenever he needed something done. But I had a huge amount of institutional knowledge, and also I knew who to call. I had contacts for everything. I think I have 840 contacts on my phone, you know, and that just goes to show what's involved in everything. So, but I'm going to ask you the last question. You ready?
Okay.
All
sure.
right.
And I've called you a lot, Cindy, and said,
Yeah.
who do I call for this? Because I can't find the answers myself.
Well, you knew who to call, and then if you called me, I usually knew who to call, so
Yeah.
it worked out. We had a good team relationship. So number 5 is many Butte-Silver Bow department directors and elected officials have suggested that government efficiency might be better served by an executive branch that has a hired city county manager or an elected mayor. And what are your thoughts as to changing our form of government from what it currently is, chief executive commission like it is now, to a city county manager, mayor? What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of like the idea because I think there's a lot for the chief executive to look into. And since I've been on council, I've noticed that. I mean, we have issues come before council, and, managers come up and say, well, we let it slip. We didn't follow through with that. Or we didn't, it's like, well, don't you have someone that says, why didn't you follow through? Or what's going on? Or they'll come up and say, that they're not, the parking. Well, they're not going out giving any parking tickets, and things like that. It's like, well, don't you follow up with them? Or if they get it, they have issues, certifications, that's another thing, Are they, there's nobody to tell them, I'm used to working with an HR person that calls and says, hey, your license is up this year. I need a copy of it before you start work the next year. I need a copy of your CPR. I need a copy of this. And I don't always see that in our government now. So I think maybe a city manager, somebody to manage one part of it while manage the employee part of it while the chief executive manages the others. I think that would be maybe a positive for Butte-Silver Bow.
Okay, thank you.
And that's just my opinion.
That's what I wanted. You're a citizen and you're a voter, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thanks.
That's all.
Mr. Walker, one last question. It goes back to Mr. Banderob's discussion about community councils or neighborhood councils. How do you feel about that? Do you think it would help your district, or do you have any opinions on that?
I definitely think it would help. I go out and walk the walking trail usually once a week, and I meet so many people, and that's kind of how I find out what's going on in my district. Just walking the walking trail, talking to people, picking up dog poop, and meeting our neighbors. And that's when they kind of give me an idea of what they want and what's, their issues are with them. So definitely some neighborhood groups that would meet and, would feed me information. That would be beneficial, I think.
Study commissioners, any other follow-ups? Ms. Dillon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, this is for Ms. Shea, if she would want to come up. I don't want to do anything with Mr. Walker or limit his time.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say or add on to?
No, that's fine.
Thank you for coming
very
up
much.
tonight. We appreciate you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Michelle, for coming back up. I just thought of this when Hattie alluded to our correspondence we got earlier. I thought I would ask you this, since you are an HR person by trade. Her question in her email was, why do we have a separate DEI department? I just wanted to ask you, do we have a DEI department in Butte-Silver Bow?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I didn't think so either, so I just thought I'd get that answer from you.
It would be a good question for the HR director,
Yeah.
but not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, I appreciate you coming up, and we appreciate you coming up and sharing your thoughts. I think there is a lot of work our group needs to do, especially as all of you pointed out in regards to the budget and thinking about our taxpayers, that they have all the information that they need to make a good decision so that there isn't an unintended consequence, if you will. We think that, being smaller and leaner, meaner might be a good idea, or it sounds like that, but then you get down into the details and you look at the budget, it might not be a good idea for the county. So there's a lot of considerations that this body needs to make, and I encourage you to please reach out to us or come up to any meeting that you see fit to add in anything that you're hearing in your districts, because you are the boots on the ground, if you will, and the people that are connected to the voters. So we really appreciate you also getting the information out for us as well. So thank you for your time. Yeah, you bet.
Commissioner O'Neill was here. I don't know if he had to leave, but
Yes, I actually texted Commissioner O'Neill. He had to run to his son's baseball game, but he planned on being back here. I thought he'd be on his way. I don't know where he's at. I could find out really quick if you guys want me to, but that would be up to you.
Yeah, we
I
can.
just wanted to make sure we didn't leave him out.
I appreciate that. I saw him leave as well. I think we can do our other work, and then he's welcome to come when he arrives, and we can circle back if that's okay with my fellow commissioners. Yeah.
And then one last thing that just came to my brain for Ms. Perdoodle, and as far as the outreach on social media, I think a cost-effective way that the commission might be able to do social media would be to go to Montana Tech and find a marketing student that is looking for their project. I mean, granted, that'll be in the fall, but even reach out to maybe one of the professors up there that might have a student that might find something like this interesting, and so could potentially get that one for free. So, thanks.
Commissioners, do we need a 10-minute? And that might give Mr. O'Neill time to get. Okay. So let's go ahead and recess, and we'll return at 7:30. Okay, I'd like to call us back to order, please. Commissioners, if you can take your chairs. Okay, so Mr. O'Neill, you're already at the podium and ready to roll. We like that. And so we have the questions. I think you were here to see the round robin, and it is semi-informal, so we'll just have follow-up questions, and you can add in as you see fit too. So,
Okay.
But I will start with Ms. McCormick with our first question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill, for being here tonight. Our first question is, what unique duties, responsibilities, or challenges do you face serving the citizens of your district?
So thank you. Again, thank you guys for having me as well. And I would say, you know, they're obviously all of them are a pretty big challenge. You know, I would kind of put the time involved is a real big issue, you know, with being a part-time commissioner and being able to serve the citizens, you know, with 100%, and not having 100% of your time, you know, having, you know, with job and family and everything, it makes it difficult to get the, you know, to be on the ball for everything. You know, there's some things that I feel like, you know, you have most of the information, or you're able to get it, you know, with talking with people and whatnot. But I feel like there's a lot of times where, you know, if there's 20 things on the agenda, sometimes it's almost impossible to have everything, you know, down and know everything that's truly going on. And then you find yourself learning as you're sitting here. You know, you're just reacting on certain things. So that's kind of a big challenge that I would say. Time.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Thielen.
Josh, thank you for being here, Madam Chair. Almost skipped that part on purpose. Anyway, so this is going to kind of come back, but with it being part-time, do you think you would be better with more time available if it was a full-time position or a half-time position?
Yes, thank you, Ben, for that question. Yes, I think that if you were, you know, first and foremost, you know, try to take care of my family, and then this is my real job, and then it's the commission, right? So, you know, throughout the day, each and every day, there's an email, there's something that you're trying to get to. If you were full-time, I think it would be more fun, which isn't really a word, but it'd be a lot more enjoyable because you'd be able to come and attack a lot of things and try to, you know, get the information. You could be at not every, but majority of meetings that were happening, you know, around town. You would be able to have, again, going back to your time, you'd have a lot more time to try to get to the issues and be able to at least, I mean, I don't know how many times I'm talking to people at 9 o'clock at night, or, you know, in between lunches or in between work or whatever, or, so definitely short answer would be, I think that it would be very beneficial.
Ms. Shaw, number 2. Oh, wait.
What's that?
It's like, did I start that direction? I've lost it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did I miss something in the translation? Hey, Josh.
Hey,
Good
how
to
you
see
doing?
you.
It's good to see you.
Am I sitting in your chair, or is it
Oh, you're
Eric's?
just one over.
Oh, yeah, Eric's, okay.
You got that weird Mankins guy. I'm just joking.
All right, well, it's really nice to see you here.
it's
And
nice.
thanks for coming, and you had a game with your son? That was
Yes,
a ball game?
yes.
Okay. Do you have to rush back, or are you done?
No, I thought they were done, but they had one more inning, but
Okay. All right, number 2. Do you feel that any of the duties and responsibilities assigned to commission members of Butte-Silver Bow, the existing charter, do you think any part of that existing charter needs to be revised or removed after 20 years of not doing anything with it? It comes down to, basically. Go ahead.
Thank you, Cindy. So that question, you know, I keep looking at that, and it's a really a tough one. I mean, yes. So I've been the guy that when we've talked about changing the government, I was always like, well, that's really cool. I was not voted in to do that, so good luck to whoever's going to do that. So for a long time, was like, we need a study commission because one, being a part-time and trying to learn what's going on in government, you know, when you first come up to be a commissioner, you're like, I love Butte, Montana. I'm sick of complaining. I'm going to come change the world. Well, then you realize how much is involved and how much you don't have any idea what's going on up here, right? So as you learn the process and procedures, which still learning for the record, so to talk about what needs to be changed and revised is really tough for me to answer because I feel like our form of government has worked. Is it perfect? No. If we change it, will it be perfect? Absolutely not. So, I mean, I have no clue what needs to be changed. I mean, if we go into like the city manager situation versus having the chief executive, I still think that, you know, it's been proven obviously that it works and it doesn't work. I think, I don't know if I'm going off on the city manager thing and the wrong question, but as I might as well just keep going with that. But with the city manager, yeah, that's in 5, huh? Sorry, I'll just go a little bit. Having the city manager works. I see it being a positive. I see it being a negative also. You know, you're hiring somebody that has a degree, has a background, that knows, you know, that is possibly a city manager. But is he from Butte? He or she, are they from Butte? Do they live here? They know who, what, when, where, and why. I think that, I think we're really lucky having Butte people that know our town, know our city, that have been able to run it. You know, obviously, I'm sure that there's negatives to that as well. But so I mean, I'm not saying I'm against the city manager. I do think there's a lot of positives about that, but I also think that you know, I have a hard time with it too. You're bringing somebody from, not against anybody from out of town. I'm glad our town is growing. I hope people keep moving here, right? But I just feel like it's growing up here and having, I mean, that speaks highly for me anyway, knowing, you know, your people, you know, your citizens, you know what and if you're jumping in the ringer to being here to try to make it better, you're there for that reason. You're not just here for a job. It's just not, oh, I got hired, I'm moving to Butte to be the city manager. Not that it would be like that terrible. I'm saying I think it'd be really awesome too. So I hate to talk out of both sides of my mouth on that one, but I'm still not totally sold where the benefit to what we do now would be for a city manager. So hope I partway answered that question.
You did, Josh, and I will go back to the charter in one specific duty, one of the powers and duties of the council is to authorize neighborhood communities, or councils. And so I could just ask you how you feel about that, because that is in the charter, and we're talking about things you could revise or remove. So, and I know you've been around long enough to hear about community councils, so.
Yeah,
okay.
So, I guess, would you give me an example of one?
Madam Chair? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
We don't have them now, and so it would be another thing that would come up. And I know Mr. Van Rob and other people have talked about having the opportunity for commissioners to authorize citizens to form their own neighborhood councils, community council, and I wondered if that would help you as a commissioner. Or would just add something else to your plate, as far as. But it's in there. It's already in the charter. You're asked to do it, but.
God, okay.
Okay,
Thank
there
you.
you go.
Thank you for that. So, I mean, I think it would help if you did have, but I also feel like it would be another meeting if you wanted to do it do it properly. Would it work? Yes, I think there would be some definitely positives of that. Would the certain districts, if each one of them had something like that, would they be more engaged to come to that versus coming here? I feel like that, game times every Wednesday at 7:30. The community has their opportunity to come up here and definitely speak freely and do. They also, I think every commissioner's email and cell phone number is there for certain things. I mean, is it hard to get a hold of the commissioners? I'd say if you call them enough times and leave them enough messages, they'll get back to you, right? I think it could help. Yeah, short answer, yes, it could help, yeah.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Josh, for coming in tonight. Especially, I know everyone's busy and lots of things, so I'm glad you put family first, so thank you for that. But can you speak to, in your opinion, you mentioned the city manager and knowing that it's not perfect, but do you think having a front-facing mayor that does like the ribbon cuttings and is a political position because it's elected would help our community? And this is something I asked Hattie, Commissioner Thatcher, with regard to the fact that we're basically a one-party town, and the fact that the commission a lot of times 11-1, 10-2, 12-0, and we'll ask you the commission question probably next, but knowing that, do you think that separation is a good idea, and to have that mayor position and an administrator, to make those two separate, to give each the equal time that, or the time to do both of those kinds of jobs effectively?
Cindy, thank you. I think there could be, it's very situational where it could help. I think I guess depending on what the different duties would actually be, but I feel like either way you're going to have, there's still going to be kinks. I think that, I guess, help me with this question. Can I ask a question? Who would be in charge of who in that situation? I guess that's something I don't understand. I appreciate the.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And the city manager would be accountable to the Council of Commissioners as an appointed position, and then they would, the administrator would answer to the Council of Commissioners, who therein are elected by the people. That's the check there. And then for a mayor to do the ribbon cuttings and other events and to promote Butte, for that matter, would be an elected position, so they're directly accountable to the people.
So thank you. So I still, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would, I feel like then you're just adding one more person, and I'm not trying to be dumb. Please note that I don't see where, and maybe I'm just not seeing it all the way through, is I just don't see where I feel like you're just adding one more person, and would it just be, I feel like we are promote Butte in other factors. Again, I'm not saying it wouldn't work, but I still don't see you're talking about at least another, in my opinion, $80,000 to $100,000 position. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. So I apologize.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, Josh, maybe I can help you out a little bit here. So instead of just adding that one position, that person's going to be hired, they're not going to be elected. And their job is going to be to take care of the daily business and kind of make everything run in a smooth fashion, to where the mayor is going to be doing basically in effect what JP's doing now. He can't do both parts of the job. There's not enough of him to go around, as you see. So the mayor's going to be going around kissing babies, shaking hands, cutting ribbons, and all that good stuff, while the city manager would be doing the daily operations of the city. If he does not, then he's terminated. We're not electing him, we're hiring him. So there's the difference.
Gotcha. Thank you for the clarification very much. I mean, I could see how that could work. It wouldn't be a bad thing. It wouldn't be. I think it could work. I guess then you'd have to go with the other parts of it. Then where would, how many people would we have more staff for them, right? Or would the two secretaries take care of both of their deals, right? Would what would like where would Mr. Cambridge lie in that, right? Would that be, is that, I'm just talking out loud. I don't need an answer. I'm just saying, speaking out loud and thinking about that, like what, so there'd be more to that as well, right? To where you'd have to decide, okay, how many more people do we need for this? Who's keeping them accountable, right? If we need to fire them, which I understand that now in that conversation, but.
So there's growing pains, and that's kind of where we're at now, correct? Butte's growing, and we have to grow with it, or wind up like Bannock and be dust. So.
Also, I just feel for the good of the order, I think we've been trying to make the mayor job or talk about the mayor simplistically, which it isn't just ribbon cutting. There is, powers and duties related to administration and executive function. So, and typically a mayor will be the presiding officer of the council, and they would be the one elected at-large person if we were to choose to, say, have districts, and the mayor would be the one elected at-large representing the constituency. And they also, have a budgetary responsibility, and they're responsible for looking at the executive functions of the government as well, and making sure that ordinances are done and followed through on, and working with the city manager to oversee the departments. So we've been simplifying it, talking about it, in this kind of way of how we would separate those functions. But I want to make sure for our YouTube listeners and all of ourselves that we kind of remind ourselves that mayors do a little more than cut the ribbons and kiss the babies. But that's just a simplistic way of us looking at it. Anyway, so we digress.
Thank you for the clarification.
You bet.
If it's just kissing babies and shaking hands, like I'm running. So.
Okay. I like it. Question 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill, for being here tonight. Question 3 is, could the Council of Commissioners be more effective and better meet the needs of our community by having fewer members that are compensated as full-time city-county officials?
Thank you, Chad. Yes, I do. I think that, it would be. I think that you would do, if you were able to give 100% of your day to just that, I think it would be very beneficial. You would be able to, I think it'd be funner, okay? It'd be really fun. With that being said, of how many you would decide would be the hard thing. Like if you had, so my thought, you would cut it to 6, and then you would have 6 full-time. Also in that study part of it is how much you're going to pay somebody. I really feel like these have to be good jobs. They have to be good, like, to get professional. Not saying, for the record, that you only can get good people by how much money you pay them. But however, this can't be I feel like this needs to be a job that you're going to go get elected. You're going to know you can still live good in Butte, Montana, and do a good job. I don't know what that salary is, but I think it needs to be not $30,000. It needs to be a good salary. With that being said, I know somebody's real quick on the part-time of cutting them down. To me, if you're going to go full-time, you go full-time with good money for somebody that will run and give you a good qualified candidate. The part-time thing, to me, is you just keep it at 12 then, because you're going to get the same thing. You're going to get, in my opinion, right? I feel like you're going to just have the same part-timeness and then have less. If you have less, it would be just harder for the individuals to accommodate the citizens, for sure.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, Josh, so what would you think about a living wage in the $60,000 range, somewhere in there? And the other thing is about the 6 commissioners, would we be better served with 4 and then having the city manager, the mayor, be the tiebreaker?
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, with that being said, I think that would, it's not a bad idea. I honestly, you guys think I'm crazy, but I really feel like it needs to be a $60,000 to $80,000 position. I mean, I know that we talk about the budget, we talk about money, but if we're gonna, we talk about growing, okay? Growing costs money too. And if you want to pay your people, and the other fact of paying somebody to move here, or like going with the city manager job, like I could imagine the qualifications for that are, could be, pretty high qualifications to be the city manager. But it is gonna cost money to get good quality candidates, in my opinion. And definitely that's, you hope you elect the popularity thing, whatever. It's just how elections go sometimes, and but hopefully you get good quality people. And then to shrink it down that much to 4 people, right? It would be pretty intense thing to throw people in there, and hopefully you could give them short answer. I apologize. I'm going to go with 80,000 is my thing. I'll probably get lynched as I leave, but that's my number.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with that, and I'm glad you're talking about costs, but this is something I asked Commissioner Thatcher. In past study commissions, there was discussion about streamlining the executive branch with regard to specifically the auditor and the assessor, because a lot of their duties are done in Helena now as opposed to locally here in Butte-Silver Bow. What would be your opinion with regard to streamlining the executive branch functions in order to have the ability to pay those living wages?
Thanks, Cindy. I think if you've seen it as, written down in the structure and it made sense financially, and it also, if we could make it make sense financially and still have a good outcome, I think it could work. I guess I would just have to see it, I like crayons, I like drawn out, so it's kind of written down, but I don't think it's a bad idea. And again, with the whole, if we're trying to change it for the better, and if it costs a little more money to do so, I feel like that has to be said and well known to our citizens that it's for the better,
Mr. Thielen, can you take question 4?
Madam Chair, I would love to. Josh, if the number of commissioners were reduced, what would you think would be important considerations to ensure fair representation of amongst the residents throughout the geographic boundaries of Butte-Silver Bow?
Thank you, Ben. So I was kind of being simple about, there's 12 now, cut it to 6, but it wasn't really thinking about having the mayor, or, I wasn't thinking about that part, but I will say the good part about having the districts and having people represent their districts, there is something to be said about that, because then the people in the districts have somebody to go to. Now, with that being said, there's plenty of times that I know that all of the commissioners deal with other things in other districts, and then respectfully tell the other commissioners, hey, I'm dealing with, somebody called me on this, and just because you know other people, so on and so forth. But I think Commissioner Fisher was saying something about how the people could go to all the commissioners, which I feel like they still do. But I do think that, even the representatives, and there's districts, and again, I'm not saying this is right, but because they've always done that, right? But there's having the representation from certain parts and where you live, like we're in my district, I've lived there for a long time. I mean, I feel proud to be representing that district. So, I feel like I know, I'm not going to say everything, but I know a little bit, know the area, know what's happening a little bit. And so to keep them split up and how they are, or however they'd be split up, I just feel like that's a good idea still to, again, representing your people.
Ms. Dolan, we have question 5. I feel like we've kind of answered that, but let's go ahead and go back to this as well anyway, and see if there's any parting thoughts. This is about the city manager, mayor question.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll ask this, and you can tell us if you've already answered it. Many Butte-Silver Bow department directors and elected officials have suggested that government efficiency might be better served by an executive branch comprised of a hired city-county manager and an elected mayor. What are your thoughts as to a city-county manager, city-county manager mayor compared to the current chief executive form of government?
So thank you, Cindy. I guess I go a little more on that. I think it could work. Understanding it more, even, and I appreciate you guys helping me understand even more. I should have studied more, but I did not. I'm not going to lie to you. And with that being said, in this ball game, in this realm of trying to figure out how to do a good job here, and then when you throw that in there, you're kind of like, what the heck do we need that for? But I think it could work. I really do. I think it could work with the right amount of commissioners, and I think it could make sense. I just hope that we're not. I hope we're not looking at it as, well, they do it in these other towns, and they, just because they're doing it there, it works. I mean, everything has its positives and has its negatives. So. I think we've done a good job over the past couple of years. Of course, I'd say that because I've been on the commission, right? But, I'm all for change, though, for sure. Again, I'll go back to and say when people were talking about, hey, we should change this government, I'm like, well, again, somebody else needs to do that. And again, I appreciate all you guys putting your, being here and doing what you're doing. It's really great. Compared to what we're doing now, I just hope that there's not more. I hope it's just not another thing that's just as bad as what we're doing now, right? But I think that there could be some good to it as well.
Ms. McCormick, did you want to ask your question on terms?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. O'Neill, what do you think about term limits for council members?
Thanks, Marie. The term limits. So, obviously 4 years, definitely. There has to be a 4-year. Yeah, I don't know if that's a thought of changing that. I will tell you this, in my 5th year of being on council, and in my 2nd term being on finance and budget, it was the first time, and maybe because I'm a slow learner, however, I was excited about the budget. I was like, this budget's good. I enjoyed it. Not really, I shouldn't say enjoyed it, but I felt good about it. I felt good about after we passed it, I'd be like, if there's somebody's like, why'd you do this? I would have to grab the book, but I actually felt like that we accomplished something, and I understood what we were doing. Now, when you go term limits, I don't know if that'd be tough because what if you have somebody that's that good and representing the town, and they are that good? The people want them. So I'm fine with no term limits. I think if the people keep electing the person to be there, I think it's fine.
Excellent. Other follow-up questions? Mr. O'Neill, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
Not really, just a comment. Again, thank you guys for all you're doing. I know how I could imagine what you're going through right now. Oh my God. So thank you so much for being crazy enough to put your names on the ballot to be elected to this, because it's awesome. It's so wonderful that you're doing it, and I appreciate every minute you're spending on it, because, oh my God. And thank you for your time, big time.
Thank you. We appreciate you as well. That's you can maybe make it back for the game. It's probably over, huh? Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. You bet. All right. So next, we went through the correspondence and study commission update. We did that, the correspondence at the beginning of the meeting, but any study commission update?
Not really, not so much. I do have a personal update. I will be, I have to go back east July 17th through 21st. So we will have to figure out whether in July if we're going to be switched to every other weeks or what, but we'll see how that affects the schedule here. But that is coming up and very quickly. So that's maybe something we can discuss under new business is our schedule.
Okay. So then moving to unfinished business, we have our op-ed pieces. Mr. Seppen did drop those in email right before this meeting, so if we could please commit to getting those turned right around and back to him as soon as possible so we can get that next section out. And then Ms. Adams is here. Did you have anything you'd like to add tonight? Okay. We're waiting for her contract to be approved. We are moving it through council per county attorney and Ruth's recommendation so that we follow all the I's and T's, I guess, if you will. And so that will be approved soon, and she'll be moving forward. She's kind of working as a volunteer right now, so thank you for your time. We appreciate you. Party line, it looks like we are through our groups. Next Wednesday will be the last of us, right? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we did not go on party line on the 18th. The three of us, Chad, myself, and Lori were there, but they had it listed as the 25th. So we will be attending this Wednesday.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure that we follow up with them and say, I understand what was going on. I think my organization was scheduling different party line things, and so it was saying Raylyn on there instead of, so I think that's our problem. So I will be sure to follow up with them, and I will email everyone that we've got the dates, because now we'd be to the next round robin of who's going to go on party line. So. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I have a conflict, so Chad and Cindy have agreed to do party line without me, and then I am going to take Chad's place for the podcast on Thursday.
I like the teamwork. Excellent. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Lori and I and Dan Dennehy were at the Sunshine Kiwanis that same day at 7 in the morning. I couldn't believe Lori's going to do two gigs in one day, but that was so interesting, and they really appreciated us being there. They're full of questions, and it just gave me a kind of a little sneak peek at what most people don't know anything about what we're doing. They had very basic questions but of course our advertising is going to change all that. But it was fun, and I hope we do more of these service clubs. It was really, really a good experience.
I guess just to tag tail, there are several Kiwanis clubs, and the Kiwanis Sunshine Camp one, they don't meet in the summer, but would like us to come when they start up in the fall with their organization. We'll probably be ready maybe to present more what would be in our preliminary report, but they would also like us to come to their meetings.
Excellent. Ms. Khan?
I had a question by somebody when I was at the No Kings rally last weekend, or weekend and a half ago, and asking if, I don't know how this came up and how she knew to ask me this, but if Butte was doing a study commission, so I told her the spiel and everything, would it be appropriate for us to, maybe they have a voter registration table there. Would it be appropriate for us to have a table there? I'd be glad to sit there with information or not. Something you all can think about and maybe discuss over email or something. But just because I was approached by somebody, so.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say absolutely not with regard to the No Kings rally. Those are political protests, and I don't think that's our position. I think that would be detrimental to our cause.
I was going to say that exact same thing. I think we have to stay non-advocational, if you will, and at our own events, if you will. And then I think the service clubs going to those is a different sort of feel. It's an informational gathering and an event that we're invited to. So I think any sort of perceived protest or organized protest in a political rally is not an appropriate place for us.
That's why I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Ms.
Shaw.
How about farmers market? Did anybody think about maybe having a table? I mean, a bunch of people are out there, and I don't know. We probably need a handout of some kind to accommodate that. But I'll let Shanna. I'll put a bug in her ear about farmers market. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, and I think also, honestly, Mile High Baseball. Maybe we could be concessionaires and hand out things and volunteer for them or something, because there's a lot of families and a lot of young people there. So, yeah. Ms. Khan.
Speaking of farmers market, the library is there every week, and I'm sure they'd be happy to share their table.
Okay, we'll make those connections. Excellent. Any other discussion on unfinished business under public outreach? Okay, the other item is our charter questions with the County Attorney Enruth. Please be sure to do your homework. We made those agreements last week in terms of what our deadlines were and getting our information to him so that he could answer in one big power meeting, if you will, on the charter question. Okay, moving on to new business. Let's look at our schedule for July, given Ms. Khan is going to be gone a little bit. We had agreed to not meet on the 7th just to give ourselves a little break for the long holiday. I guess, what is the will of the group in terms of moving to every other week? Are we feeling ready? We do have that preliminary report that's pressing, and so wondering about that workload and how to get that finished. So I just will entertain conversation about that.
I guess I don't feel like we can really start the preliminary report until we actually have our listening sessions to the public, because I feel like we're missing half of our community on that. So I don't know if some of our calendar needs to be adjusted, maybe, but I think it's important that we get out at least with our listening sessions to the public. We've only really went to the Kiwanis, and there was a lot of just basic information we need to get out there, primarily education of what we're doing. So I feel like we're premature in maybe start to start writing our preliminary report without having those meetings done.
Right, so if we're looking at not meeting, maybe we can use these Mondays as possible listening sessions or times to schedule in things for us to be out in community instead of sitting here in these chairs, perhaps. I think, using July for that sort of outreach might be more beneficial. But I want to hear thoughts. And I agree with you, Ms. Casey. I feel like we're just not there yet. And the timeline draft is pushing some of that report, so I feel like we have to do work, and I feel hesitant to not meet, given that we have workload that is yet to be accomplished. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's what I really want to get across to folks, and Shauna will definitely help us out with this, is the idea of a listening session and bringing the public, or we go out to them and have a place where we can talk with them, and with the understanding that it's not like a commission meeting, and if it's not just public comment, it's public dialogue and wanting to, if they need a little bit of education, take the first half hour or first 15 minutes and say, this is what we're expecting and what we're hoping the public will give us as far as information on the charter and what, the implications are. And yeah, anytime we can to meet with folks and get out of here and have that and let them understand that we really, really want to talk with them about what their ideas are and get their opinions. So as soon as we can do that, the better.
Yeah. Could we plan to meet on the 14th with the idea in mind? We have emails that have come from Ms. Adams, and then having some of these public engagement things that we know are upcoming, that the content of most of our meeting on the 14th would be discussion of how and when to hold the public listening sessions. Would that be amenable? Okay, so we'll work with that, and then the 21st we probably would not meet given Ms. Khan's absence, and then we're going to be in that every other sort of pattern, but we'll kind of take it as we go on the 14th and make the plan for the next few dates, of course, knowing that we're probably going to not necessarily have a Monday night. We might have a Thursday night or whatever that is necessary for those listening sessions. Sound good? Okay. All right. We do not have, is there any other new business? Ms. Dolan?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask a question about listening sessions. Does anybody have an idea of how many we should have? I mean, I'd love to have 1 million of them, but I know everyone's time is valuable, but I don't want 6 months to go by and we're doing a report or something and we have a section of the community that says, I still didn't know about it and I'd like to add something. So I just want to gauge how many people think we should have, and also the follow-up to that is a question about where we should have it. So maybe brainstorming on the 14th might be a good idea to brainstorm some of those things, because I mean, even the valued question of asking someone much younger than us how to interact with people and get their attention might be an idea of how many and where we should have this for the most bang for our buck.
I think that would be an excellent addition to the 14th, and we can certainly pull Ms. Adams in with her expertise, and I think beer and pizza was always mentioned, but anyway. That was what you're going to say? Okay.
No.
I'm sure that she can give us some she's had experience with these things for years now. As young as she is, she's had a lot of years of this under her belt. And I think that she'll be able to help us figure out how many meetings we need and, where they could be going on. Can't wait.
Mr. Thielen.
Do we have any idea when Shanna's contract's going to be okayed? Or when's it coming before, or?
I do have an idea, and I will be sure to share it with you as soon as I find the email, and I don't want to misrepresent the date. Let's see. July 2nd. Any other new business? Okay. And then we don't have a public hearing tonight. Any other scheduled matters? And then our announcements, again, we're not meeting. We've already kind of discussed that, but we'll be meeting next Monday with the commissioners, the other 6 who wanted to come, and then we will be off on July 7th. Our next meeting would be July 14th. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Any opposed? Okay, you can stay. Thanks all. We'll see you next week.